I totally reject the idea that Jews should have the right without any reservations always to immigrate to Israel. I think that Israel should not accept anyone as an immigrant if he is over 90 years old. Sorry, you gave the best years of your life to another country, you will also die there, not here. I'm not your cemetery. I'm very cold-blooded person.
Yeah, I see. No.
Hard to deal with, huh?
Welcome to another episode of the Soothing Semantics Podcast. I am your host, Raffi Pinsky. Of course, make sure to subscribe to the channel, smash the like button, leave your comments for all of your South Florida real estate needs. Of course, make sure to follow me on Instagram at Raffi the Realtor. Reach out to me, and I would be happy to help you. This week, we have a controversial Israeli figure, someone who has been very outspoken against Zionism, against Israel itself, even against Jewish people. You know, he's a very interesting figure. I'm looking forward to this conversation. It kind of happened very randomly. You know, I've known of you for a long time, Amir. And Amir is a professor. He was a tenured professor at Ariel University. You're quite an eloquent guy. You also do comedy. You've been on many podcasts. You definitely became well known when you were speaking, and somebody threw a chair at your head. So that was actually how I found out about you. I didn't know you until then. So go ahead.
It's weird that after I wrote over 100 scientific articles, 5 scientific books, 2 novels, and 2,000 citations, over 2,000 citations, I'm eventually well known for being smashed in my head by a chair in fucking Ashdod.
Yeah. What I was just wondering is what was up with the nip? Because you grabbed that guy's boobie. You went for that. Was that just like a natural...
This was so incidental. Look, he was wearing a shirt that lacked the last button, and instinctively and intuitively, I of course leaned on him when the chair smashed me. I didn't know actually it was a chair. I was thinking that a fan is like simply putting his hand on my head or something to a sign of I don't know.
Well, you have a strong head.
Whatever, I don't know. Anyway, I was leaning on him, and because his shirt lacked the upper button, it ended up with the nipple exposed, but there was nothing intentional there.
Listen, I'm glad he had something. I'm glad he had something to grab on, or you had something to grab onto.
But you know, I mean, if you already go into it, and this is probably relevant to your podcast, you know, when he was throwing the chair on me, what was the exact moment? The exact moment was when I was saying that I'm not going to stand on Memorial Day at the siren that salutes dead soldiers, because in my view, some of them, I don't know how many, but definitely more than one, were war criminals, and therefore I'm not going to salute to them. And then he was throwing the chair.
Well, yeah, I think that's pretty fucked up. So we'll get into that. Let's get into that. Okay, so you were on the Dana show. Quite frankly, I saw a few of your shows. You were talking with Yair Ansbacher. I gave it a little bit of a view. I got a bit of a background. So for the people that don't know who you are, maybe people who even do have an idea, I did want to go into, and this is not the first time you're telling this story, but just to give us a brief background of when your family got to Israel and how you were raised, because you mentioned you had quite a bit of contempt, especially for your mom. So if you mind just kind of, yeah.
All right. My family immigrated to Israel in the early 30s, both sides. A mom came from what is today called Romania, and therefore, and this is probably the only thing I can be thankful to her for, is I have a Romanian passport, thanks to the fact that he was born technically in a place that is now Romania. However, culture-wise, she was German. The mother tongue at home was German. She didn't speak German to me. I learned German later. I cannot say that I owe my German to my mom. Father came from Poland. Both of them were, in my view, work migrants. Nothing Zionist about them. They came to Israel because Israel was, at that point of time, the best option they could get, not the best option there is, which is a great difference between the two. In other words, a grandfather from my mother's side, he was studying engineering in Belgium. He wanted to stay in Belgium. He knew that Belgium is better, it's a better deal, but the Belgians were not idiots. They said, this East Romanian Moldovan guy, we don't need him here, out. And the options were either back to Romania, which was quite backwards at that point of time, or Israel. He chose Israel. It was 1932. A grandfather on my father's side lived in Poland. He was a merchant, and he was also not very successful in his business. These were the years of the Big Depression. And he was searching for other options. He also owed money to the Polish income tax. And I will always will be grateful to Poland that despite the fact that grandfather left Poland on the condition that he would pay them income tax for the year 1933, which he never paid. He never paid. Yes, dead grandfather, is still owing money to the Polish authorities, Polish income tax authorities. Despite that fact, the Poles were generous enough to award me Polish citizenship, which I actually lost due to my father earlier, because father was serving in the independence war in Israel. So both of them came to Israel because they had no better options. And as far as my father is concerned, father was always quite sorry for that choice of his own parents. Mom, on the other hand, was very satisfied. The dream of my mother, she was a typical petit bourgeois woman, and her dream was to live all her years in the same apartment in Tel Aviv, and all the years buy from the same grocer, all the years eat the same food, all the years work at the same job, all the years go to the same synagogue, all the years watch the same films. She used to watch Gone with the Wind, I don't know, 10 times, 20 times, God knows how many times. She was thinking it's a great film. This was my mother. You can call it conservative, you can call it retarded, up to you.
A woman of routine. She loved her comfort. She liked her comfort zone.
Yes.
Okay. Similar to yourself.
What?
Similar to yourself, I would say. It seems that way anyway.
This is your interpretation. If you may share the reasoning with me, I'll be happy, because I don't think that I am very much looking like my mom.
Well, no,
I mean, definitely not by attitude, but
that's not what I meant.
Please.
No, that's not what I meant. I meant specifically.
Sorry, the voice is not perfect. What did you mean?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
No, I meant in the sense where you like your routine, because you mentioned Newton's law. I came for, I watched quite a bit of the podcast you've been on. You mentioned Newton's law and about how people tend to do what's comfortable for them.
I understand. Okay, I understand. I didn't. The word routine was skipping. By the way, to those who see us now, they don't know that this podcast is being recorded after 2 a.m. So obviously, I'm here and there. I'm a bit tired and may skip a word.
That's understood.
But yes, my mom was very much into routine. And Dad was a bit different. Dad was more, I would say, adventurous, and Dad also left religion quite intentionally with a lot of bitterness. Mom, I wouldn't call her, again, religion. I don't think that her parents were also very religious. I would again say that this was a very conservative, in the bad sense of the word conservative, family, my mother's side. Dad was better. Dad was working. Dad was also searching for new jobs here and there. Was not working for the same job for the same place for 5 decades.
What were both of their jobs? What were they doing? Because you mentioned your mother came from, as you said, bourgeoisie. She came from a wealthy family. I remember you saying that.
She was petit bourgeois. Mom was a civil servant, very typical civil servant. And my dad was kind of swinging and switching between industry, public sector. He was an economist. In today's standards, we would call him probably analyst. Of course, the terms were a bit different 30, 40 years ago, but he was basically analyzing the worthiness of investment.
Got it. Okay. And so remind me, your parents stayed together? They were separate. They were
Yes,
separated,
no,
no?
no, no, no. They stay together.
Oh,
My father suffered for between 1960. They were married in 63. Mom died at 2011, so he suffered all of these years, 40, 48 years of misery.
okay. And why do you say that?
This is how it was. I remember I was there. I mean, I remember a very intimidating, predominant woman who was all the time threatening my father, and my father was simply a weak creature, and he was surrendering instead of telling her, "Do whatever you want. I'm out. You are out. Whatever." He
Right.
was.
So you think,
He was also, look, we're talking about a man who was registering property on the name of his wife, even when he brought the money. He's a very bad, my dad is a very, very bad example of a man, an Israeli man who surrenders to a woman under the threat that she would, I don't know what, leave him. So what? As for my
right.
mom, she's simply a very bad example of a woman. Very, very bad example of a female creature.
So got it. So you mentioned the Yom Kippur thing. I remember you mentioned this a few times on a few podcasts that when it came to Chagim, to holidays, she wasn't particularly religious. She didn't personally follow a lot of it, but she didn't want people to know that she didn't follow it. So she would keep the blinds closed in the apartment, and she wanted to be secret about it. She didn't want people to know that she wasn't doing certain things. And that
Yeah,
bothered you a
yeah. I
lot.
mean, the most ridiculous thing was actually her attitude towards opening grocery stores on Saturday. She was shopping on Saturday, okay? And despite the fact that she was shopping personally on Saturday, she arranged once a petition against the opening of a supermarket not far from her house on Saturday, claiming that it would disturb hurt the feelings of those who go to the synagogue and have to see the grocery store open selling non-kosher produce, etc. And again, to my opinion, it's like a league of hypocrisy. I think by any standards, it's a league of
So,
hypocrisy.
okay. So I'm actually really excited for this, Amir, because there's so many things that come to mind. But what I want to do is I want to hold off for a moment on the familial things. And I want to move now toward Israel. Now, you say that you're anti-Zionist.
Yes.
What's your right? And you're very strong. You
I
say
would
that
say
very
that I would say that even more than anti-Zionist, I am non-Zionist. The anti aspect is more prevalent when Israel commits war crimes, which happens very frequently recently. But
Mm.
be, above all and more overarching is the fact that I'm simply not Zionist. I'm not in this game. I don't care about the reunification of Jews in the Holy Land. I don't care about Jewish tradition. I don't care about whether I don't think that any religion deserves a state of its own, and I don't think that Judaism is an exception. I'm simply not in this game. Being anti-Israel is something that is more predominant when Israel commits atrocities that cannot be overlooked.
Okay. Do you at least appreciate the fact that even though you're staunchly against Israel, you don't really even believe there's a necessity for its existence? You've said these things. Do you, and I'm just asking you plain questions, do you acknowledge at least the fact that you get to have these opinions while there are people protecting those opinions? Meaning you can still have the freedom to say what you want to say. You're not being killed for it. You're not being jailed for it. And in many countries in the region, you wouldn't have the freedoms to say these things. You acknowledge that at least, right?
The question is, what is your frame of reference? If your frame of reference is freedom of speech in Saudi Arabia, maybe you have a point. Simply Saudi Arabia or Egypt or Iraq is not a frame of reference for me. Frame of reference for me is Switzerland, Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, these kind of countries.
I would even argue in their components now, even in the West, where like in England, for example, you have more freedom to speak your mind in Israel than many Englishmen do in England about the things they think.
While I'm not exactly an expert on the exact status of freedom of speech in the UK, I would still say, in a way, partly agree with you that the indispensable influence of Zionism and Jewish organizations in other countries is definitely damaging and destroying freedom of speech. If you mentioned the UK, we can go into examples. I mean, again, I'm not the expert to consult with, but for example, there was recently a case of an orthopedic doctor, if I remember her exact expertise, Marwa Etvas, I don't know, Marwa something, who was suspended because she was writing on Twitter, if I'm not mistaken, against Israel, kind of maybe favoring Hamas, maybe not, depends on interpretation, but my position would be that whether she's sympathizing with Hamas or not sympathizing with Hamas simply has nothing to do with her work as a physician. The number of complaints coming from patients who say, look, I'm Jewish, I came to her, and instead of connecting the parts of my leg, she decided to cut them, and now I'm invalid. This never happened. So her opinions are her opinions. You may dislike her opinions, may not like her as a friend, but to me it looks totally natural that I don't know, dismissing a person or suspending somebody from work should not be in any sort of way related to his political or ideological point of view. May this political view may be what it was, and I would even say further. Let's say that somebody is a Nazi. Okay, 100% Nazi. Does it have an effect on his work as an engineer, water engineer, construction engineer? Probably not. And if there is no direct effect, then this should not be have any effect on his work, that his political opinions. You should not, you cannot suspend him or fire him or whatever because you don't like his views. I would say it also if somebody is very pro-Israeli and supports Israel's war crimes in Gaza, I would still say the same thing. I'm simply very liberal, very progressive. I'm against strong government, against conservatism, against in any sort of way interfering with one's personal life. The place of religion in a modern state, in my view, should be clandestine, hidden, not relevant. You want to believe, believe. You want to pray, pray. Not my thing, your thing.
Okay, so I can respect that. I personally believe in separation of church and state. The thing about the war we've been in,
which is not the case in Israel, as you know.
But here, because right. Well, the thing about Israel is, in order for Israel to sustain itself and exist for the long haul, and most Israelis want that to happen. You may not feel that way, but you get to live there, and I believe to a large extent, you're living in a circumstance where I quote Einat Wolf to say that you have luxury beliefs. I think there are young guys, 18 years old, 19 years old, willing to be violent in order for you to be able to live your life. And I believe that violence, if it can be avoided, should be avoided. But to act as if we can live in a world where violence is never an option and can never be an option when you have people that are willing to use it at every chance they get, then we have to sometimes use it in response. So I guess I could say the quarrel that I have with some of the things that you believe is they're very utopian. If I could live in a world where nobody fights anyone and no one kills anyone and we all sing Kumbaya, that's fantastic. But unfortunately, we're in a region where it's very clear to me, and I'll go into it, it's very clear to me that the land dispute is very much secondary. I believe that it's really not the concern at all. The reality of why Jews being in Israel and having rule over Israel is such an issue for the people in the region is because Muslims fundamentally who follow Islam to a T, who genuinely believe in it, they believe they're commanded to not allow Jews to have rule over it. Why? Because Islam came as a replacement theology. Okay, so according to Islam, Jews were the chosen people. They lost their chosen status. The Christians, and this is the Christians believe that they effectively became the new chosen ones, and then Muslims through Muhammad came afterwards, and now they're effectively the third and final chosen ones. And so therefore, since that's the case, Jews coming back and reclaiming sovereignty or occupying, however you want to call it, that fundamentally goes against what Islam is allowed to accept. And so by us conceding, by us saying, oh, let's create two states, let's give Gaza, let's give Judea and Samaria or the West Bank, however you want to call it, that all that does is convince much of the Muslim world that they're correct, because as long as we're willing to concede and offer land, they say, okay, there's a reason to continue the fight. Okay, so that's why it's abundantly clear, and I want to get into this with you from an academic perspective, because you say you always like to say on these podcasts that you're a very rational guy. If we're looking at it from a secular liberal perspective, let's split it 50-50. It sounds great. Why wouldn't it work? But the issue is because this is such a fundamentally religious conflict, and we're in a region that's so religious, giving away land doesn't produce the result you think it does. And that this is really like the meat and potatoes of what I want to talk to you about. What's your take on what I'm saying?
My take is that simply by any objective analysis, the circumstances and the reality is not the story that you are telling. Let's go back. For
Sure.
1,400 years, Arabs were the majority of the population in Israel. This is a fact. You cannot deny it. From approximately 700 to 1948, Arabs were the majority. All the censuses that were conducted by the Turks, by the Brits, show that. Despite the Jewish immigration, despite all the Aliyot, despite Zionism, despite. Okay? Sure. Now, you have a land, not the most developed, I agree, but, slowly population grows. By the way, it's not that in Israel, in Israel, Palestine, no matter how you want to call it, the population grew very, very slowly, whereas in other countries in the region, or even in other countries in Europe, the population was, exponentially growing. No, until the 19th, 20th century, population growth was very, very slow. And they are living here. They are more or less satisfied. I mean, going their zaytunat, olives in Arabic, eating khubez, eating meat, simple life. I wouldn't call them the most developed population, but they were living their simple life with baklava, etc. And then all of a sudden, immigrants from all parts of the world, with honestly emphasis on third world or less affluent countries, such as Russia, such as Poland. Poland now is much richer, but Poland in early 20th century was not a very rich place. It was actually mainly part of the Russian Empire. Such as later Morocco, Yemen, countries that are, let's put it this way, not the tigers of the industrial world. They all of a sudden come and they say, well, you don't know. It belongs to us from the Bible. God promised to Abraham. And forget about Ishmael that was around there. That doesn't matter. Let's say that they are right. Let's say that the promised land was promised to the Jews in the Bible. How on earth is it relevant? You all of a sudden throw the local indigenous population and expect that population to accept it. And if you ask me about religion war, actually the Jewish conquering of Palestine is a religious war. It's a crusade. And furthermore, you say it's a fight, a conflict between Islam and Judaism. But let me correct you and say that in the Nakba, Arab Christians were expelled. They were not Muslims, they were still expelled. Ikrit, Biram, bye-bye. Ciao, Haifa, Christian Arabs, bye-bye. And actually the attitude of Jews towards the local indigenous population was 100% correlated with the fact whether those locals were willing to accept Jewish predominance. The Druze, for example, are completely Arabs.
أنا شخصيا نص عائلتي مصرية كلنا، ويمكن بيجي حوالي أكثر من 30 عائلة اسمها المصري. في أساسنا نص فلسطين يا أخواننا مصري ونصها سعودي. إيش من هم الفلسطينيون؟ في عندنا في أسماء كثيرة اسمها المصري وجذورهم مصرية، جذورهم مصرية. قد يكونوا من الإسكندرية، من القاهرة، من دمياط، من الوجه البحري، من أسوان، من الصعيد. نحن مصريون، نحن عرب، نحن مسلمون، نحن منكم.
Mother tongue Arabic, they divert from Islam. They are as Arabic as any Arabic subculture is.
Not initially. Yeah, not initially. They became Arab, just like everyone in the Levant became Arab through the same thing you're accusing Jews of, conquest.
Druze religion developed from Islam. Some religious scholars say, and maybe they have a point, that the difference between Druze religion and Islam is now so large that it is actually no longer a version of Islam, but an independent religion. But there is no disagreement over the fact that Druze religion developed from Islam, not from Christianity, not from Judaism, from Islam. This is the fact. This is historic fact. But anyway, what I wanted to say about the Druze, they are in Israel regarded as friends. Why they are regarded as friends, unlike Christian Arabs and definitely not unlike Muslims? But like Cherkessians are also Muslims. You know, there is a small Cherkessian minority, and they are regarded as the best allies. Why? Because they were willing to accept Jewish predominance. That's the only thing. Christian Arabs were decided not to accept Jewish predominance and to cooperate with Muslim Arabs. Cherkessians decided to cooperate, and despite the fact that Cherkessians are 100% Muslim, 100%, not 99, 100. There is not even a single Cherkessian living in Israel who is not Muslim. There are in Caucasians, not in Israel. And despite this fact, they are all of a sudden regarded as allies. So, cut the bullshit. It's not a religious war.
Commanded to terrorize the disbelievers. And this is a religion, like I said.
Commanded to terrorize the disbelievers?
The Quran says very clearly in the Arabic language, Torhibuna. This means terrorize them. It's a command from Allah.
And for your information, my dear Muslim brothers and sisters, terrorism, it is part and parcel of Islam. Terrorism is part of the deen of Islam, yes? Allah said in the ayah, وَعَدُّوا لَهُمْ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُم مِّن قُوَّةٍ وَمِن رِبَاطِ الْخَيْرِ تَرْهِبُونَ بِهِ عَدُوَّ اللَّهِ. To terrify the enemies of Allah, we should prepare ourselves. Al-i'dad al-jihad, prepare to go to jihad, is fard wa 'ayn on the Muslims, on the males like us here. That's why you should teach your son how to ride, how to shoot, because it's the sunnah of the Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it's fard on you as a father to teach him how to become a mujahid. It's not some new phenomenon to kill the enemies of Allah. And you may say to yourself, no, they're innocent. No kafir is innocent. Innocence, this, abriya is only for the Muslims. No kafir is innocent.
It's a war over real estate, and you as a realtor know what real estate means and why real estate is precious. And right. I'm telling you that as a person who also lost real estate in Israel, personal, due to that conflict, we can talk about it later if you want to talk about the personal point of view, I understand, I very much understand the Arab standpoint and the Arab misery, because in my view, real estate is precious. And even when you take real estate, even when you confiscate, you should at least compensate. And Jews are very, very good at asking for compensation in Europe. They are very, very, very bad in giving compensation to Arabs.
Amir, let me interject. There's no doubt that the Jews conquered this land, and I'll acknowledge that. But what I'll say is you're upset about the fact that Jews conquered a tiny sliver of land, but we're completely negating the fact that the Muslims from the Arabian Peninsula, through Muhammad's armies, they didn't ask these Levantine, Semitic, African countries, Andalus, they didn't ask these countries if they can be conquered. They went, raped and pillaged through much of the world through Muslim conquest. And now it's an issue when Jews rule a tiny sliver of land, and we're supposed to feel bad, but yet the fact that the Muslims conquered hundreds of times more land, that's totally fine. We should feel bad for that. What's your answer to that?
Question is, of course, obviously, when do you start the counting of history? Because I can very easily refer you to the Bible and say, look, Abraham was not local. Abraham came from Iraq. And if there was somebody local here, it was Hagar and her son Ishmael, and they were Bedouin, which more or less correlates with nowadays Arabs. But in my view, the main point is that at some point, the bad deeds that were done, the discrimination, the conquest, you name it, at some point there is oblivion. You're not going now really to close the bill with the Arabs for the conquest of Egypt, or the conquest of Iraq, or the conquest of Morocco in the 7th century. It makes no sense, because if you do that, we can also close the bill now with the Jews for conquering Canaan from the original Canaanite. And you know what? Let me tell you something. If you remember, and you probably remember, at some point in biblical history, the land of Israel was conquered by Assyrians. Remember, they actually destroyed even the kingdom of Israel and took over.
Sure.
And Assyrians are still with us. They live in Iraq. So you know what? Why to give back the land to the Jews? Let's give it to Assyrians. They were here. They ruled the place. Why not to Assyrians? And for you, they are not exactly Arabs. Again, there was assimilation and so on. But let's give it to Assyrians. They lack a state. Why not? And they have their own language. They have their own culture. I once dated one of them, not in Israel. She came from.
I didn't know you were such a ladies' man.
From Sweden, and she was
Amir.
Was actually pretty. Nothing to write home about.
I was going to say I didn't know you were such a ladies' man. You don't necessarily give off that energy, but it seems I was incorrect.
I'm not a womanizer. I like to date unique women. For me, the question it's in real estate. I'm cherry picking. I don't like to own like dozens of condominium apartments. It's not interesting to me. I like to pick the couple of unique, precious properties. Assyrian is unique. I mean, there are many beautiful girls with nice ass and tits, etc. But how many Assyrians? Not so many Assyrians.
Here's my thing, Amir. Here's my thing. Jews have lived in other people's lands for thousands of years, and we were at the whim of whatever decision they made, and we were successful, we prospered, and as soon as they decided they had enough of us, we were too powerful, with whatever claim that they had, we had no way to really defend ourselves. Okay? I, as somebody who's very pro-Jewish, pro-Zionist, I don't believe in Jews being minorities in other, meaning, yes, I live in America, I'm a minority in another country, but I know that if I ever need to, or if I ever want to, I have a country where there's a Jewish army that'll protect me. Now, let me just, before you say anything, I'm somebody who's conservative. I'm what you would call a dude's dude. And so for me, again, just reiterating, knowing that I have a country that'll look after me under all circumstances. It's not perfect by any means. There's plenty of issues with the army and the bureaucracy and customer service. We'll get into that too, and I'm sure we'll find agreement to that. What I just want to understand is if we didn't have Israel, if we absolved our governance and our rule, what would then be the case? Like, do you think is that what you would want? Would you want us to just the Knesset to absolve itself, to just step down from rule, give it over to the Palestinians? I mean, is that what you essentially would want to happen? Do you think that
First of all, I totally resent the idea that Israel should be also your security blanket. I mean, you will sit wherever you want to sit. You will work at whatever you want to work. And when all of a sudden you have some problems, whether the problems have to do with personal security or maybe health concerns or whatever, you will come and I will have to take you, give you full citizenship and take care of you after you dedicated the best years of your life to another country. I'm not talking about you personally. I know that you served in the
you could say it to me. I won't take it. But you're digging
no,
yourself.
No, because there are better examples. I mean, I totally reject the idea that Jews should have the right, without any reservations, always to immigrate to Israel. I think that Israel should not accept anyone as an immigrant if he is over 90 years old. Sorry, you gave the best years of your life to another country, you will also die there, not here. I'm not your cemetery. No, sorry.
Amir, you don't even like the country you live in. Meaning you're upset about the fact that a Jew can come from another country, but you've been spending much of your life in a country that you don't even want to exist. So how could you say that me, as somebody who I volunteered to serve, I didn't have to serve. I chose to serve as a combat soldier. Most of my family lives in Israel. Now, it's not I'm not trying to compare who's more loyal. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious, but I at least love the country. I love the people. I see tribalism. To me, tribalism is a natural human trait. The fact being an individualist goes against human nature. So I feel it's not that I necessarily deserve anything. I don't think anyone deserves anything, but I feel the fact that Jewish people, after all this time, after being persecuted over and over and over and over and over again, to have our own place. I don't, quite frankly, if it's not a conversation of whether it's fair to the rest of the world or not. The world's not a fair place. If you want to talk about the unfairness of the world was never fair, never will be. Jewish people have a country of their own, and if that pisses some people off and inconveniences some people, so be it. Throughout history, the Jews have been dealing with inconveniences. So unfortunately, if I could live in utopia, if we could create a world of utopia where everyone would have it wonderfully and no one would starve and no one would be homeless and there'd be no violence and no killing, fantastic. We don't live in that world. So for me, I mean, it's a no-brainer to have a country. No-brainer.
Of course, obviously for you it's a no-brainer because you actually take me as your free insurance premium, free insurance.
Why do you say you? But Amir, why do you say you?
Free insurance plan, and I'm sorry, I'm not willing to be your free insurance plan.
But why do you say you?
I see citizenship and statehood simply in a totally different light.
Okay.
In my view, country is not something that has a good country. I mean, there are plenty of countries, but a good country is something like a very loose holding company where people are related on the basis of their actual contribution, how many years you pay taxes. And actually, the tax authorities think like me eventually, because if I don't pay enough contribution to social insurance, I will not get social insurance payment when I'm old. And the only exception of the rule is people who immigrate from third world, from nothing stan. You are not nothing stan, you are Miami, but all of those nothing stans, and you know which countries I talk about. And they come here at the age of 80 something, and they get free medicine, and they get pension, and they get insurance. And why on earth should they get anything? You wanted to spend, I mean, even if in theory I will agree with the basic notion of Zionism that Jews should have a state and Jews from all the world should come here, blah, 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 blah. Okay, let's say accept this mumbo jumbo. Still, the question remains, why you chose to dedicate the best years of your life to another country? This was your choice. Stay in that country. I'm not your backup. Very simple.
Why are you
not your backup?
Right, but it's also not. First of all, it's not your decision to make. But secondly, why are you defending? But why are you?
My opinion.
No. But why are you so defensive of a country that you don't even really believe in? Meaning, you live there, you pay taxes, sure. You know, you're a law-abiding citizen, as far as I know. Great, but if you were a strong nationalist, I could get behind that. First of all, I think that if somebody wants to move to any country, there's a good likelihood they can do it if they do it the legal way. So imagine I wasn't Jewish. If I wanted to go to Israel because I felt some love for it, what's wrong with that?
I would not accept you. Let's not talk even just about Israel. I'm also a citizen of Poland and also a citizen of Romania, and I'm against accepting immigrants without checking what their contribution is. Very simple. Yes, I am very cynic. I am not benevolent. I don't pretend to be one. And this is maybe the difference between me and many other left-wingers, although I'm very progressive in my attitude towards civil rights and in favor of separating state from church and LGBT rights, etc., etc. But I don't believe in free immigration, because free immigration means eventually absorbing labor migrants who are worthless. I'm not against accepting immigrants from third world. I'm not against accepting migrants from Arab countries. I'm not against accepting Muslims, and I don't care how much they pray, and I don't care what they worship. I care about what they contribute. If I need, for example, engineers, and those engineers happen to be Muslim, I don't care. Let them in. I'm very happy to take them. But if I don't need engineers, I'm not going to take them, whether they are Muslims or Jews or Christian or Buddhist or Shinto. Simple as that. I'm very cold-blooded person.
Yeah, I see. No.
Hard to deal with, huh?
But the thing is I think you're verbally very cold-blooded, and I think the reason why you're so contrarian, and you're, and you have, don't get me wrong, you're an intelligent person.
Thank you.
I just think that you come from a situation, you've admitted yourself, where you were given an inheritance. I don't know what, you were a professor. You seem to have a good life in Israel, and for you, it's very easy to say, oh, well, I want certain people or I don't want certain people. When you're mentioning that the Arabs who lived in this land for 1,400 years had very simple lives, and that meaning whether they were engineers, doctors, lawyers, or shepherds, they had this land, and intellectual Ashkenazim, many of whom were intellectuals. Now, before you say anything, I know that you said that many of the smarter ones, if they had the opportunity, went elsewhere, went to France, or they went to America. There absolutely were intellectuals that came to Israel in its, several years before its founding in 1948. So whether they're intellectuals or they aren't, they're here now. Like there's Jews here now, there's a country, there's Jewish rule. For us to even have the conversation of whether things should be or shouldn't be, it exists now. It's not, and it's not likely to change anytime soon. Hopefully, I wouldn't like it to. But what I want to discuss more so are potential solutions. So for me, it's very clear. Again, I'll die on this hill, that this is a religious conflict. There are many Palestinians that I've seen give speeches acknowledging this. So how would you say that, well, let me backtrack a little bit. What would you say could actually resolve it, if you think there actually is a resolution?
Look, I disagree with you that this conflict is predominantly religious conflict, and you escape to this perspective because this perspective first comes in line with the reasoning why you should never compromise on anything. This is one point. Second point, this perspective easily finds support in neocon and alt-right and generally right-wing circuits in the USA, also partly in Europe, or the Charlie Kirks of all sorts, which is in a way it's a very ridiculous alliance, an alliance between Jews and Christians who believe that actually Jews killed Christ. It's a very strange alliance, but your resentment and hatred towards Muslims in general and towards Arabs in particular, this resentment is eventually putting the two of you in the same pot.
That's the story but Amir, that's the story of religion. Ever since Christianity and Islam came to be, all three religions have been contesting each other. You killed Jesus, we have an issue with you. Throughout history, Christians have been slaughtering us. Islam came to be and said, both of you are obsolete, both of you are full of shit, we're at war with you. The Jews, meanwhile, we weren't proselytizing. We actually said, you know what? You do your thing. We believe that God made an everlasting covenant with us. You want to believe what you want to believe, go right ahead. And the Christians and Muslims, for much of history, were saying, no, this is not okay with us. you're not chosen anymore, and you're not going to act as if you are. This whole idea you have is not going to last. We're either going to kill you, convert you, or at the very least restrict your ability to practice religion, your freedom of movement, aka dhimmi status, jizya, many other restrictions that happen in throughout history in Europe.
Look,
So,
before you can be certain of this very, very weird, in my view, claim, let's see whether the alternative perspective, namely that this is a real estate, a property-related conflict, whether this perspective is indeed erroneous. How do you check? Let's see if when you offer a fair solution, and a fair solution is not to say to the Palestinians, you have this small enclave prison style in Gaza, it's yours, congratulations, bye. This is like the Batustans in South Africa in the 80s and 70s. If you really offer a fair solution, which takes into consideration all the discrimination, all the confiscation of land and property, all the deportation and expulsion in 1948, the takeaway of territories after 1967 in the West Bank to build settlements. When you are offering a solution that really compensates for all of these atrocities, and this compensation, this suggestion, is still not accepted, maybe then we can go to deal with to adopt your perspective. But Israel so far has not offered something that even comes close to it. And no, the most generous Israeli offers were, in my view, very, very, very cheap, and were simply, if I were Palestinian, also probably wouldn't accept them because they are below standard.
Of course, they'll never accept it. That's it. But Amir, the issue is
offer, split everything half and compensate for the land. Let's see if they don't accept.
I wish you didn't have rose.
2% of the land.
I wish you didn't have rose-colored glasses, and that's the hardest part. Is like you see this, you see things with your shoes on, and you're expecting other people to see things.
I enjoy the rosy color. Sorry,
I see that. But you're
glasses.
I think the issue is that you have this wonderful view of 50-50. I have one part of the sandwich, you have the other, and you're hoping that the other side is willing to view it in the same way you are. And this is the mistake that Jews and Israel and Israelis have been making, is thinking that a fundamentally religious group of people who believes at its core that this must be Muslim land, that it was conquered by the Muslims and must remain conquered in order to keep a caliph, and they're unwilling to compromise. There are some that are willing to compromise. There are moderates that are.
There was never a caliph here. The last caliph here was in the 7th or 8th century.
No, but that wasn't the point. Oh, that wasn't the point I was making. The goal of Islam at its core is to do that. I'm not some conspiracy theorist. There is very clear surah, there's very clear Islamic belief that commands them to make the world a Muslim world over the course of time. You want really now
to interpret every sentence in the Bible and see all the awful that Jews are allowed to commit, including killing goyim, including getting rid of all those who are not Jews from the land of Israel. You want really to now take all of these sentences and adopt them and one by one and treat them as if it is direct orders by which Jews have to act, including, for example, scolding anyone who is gay. No, things have changed over the years, and the surahs, with all due respect, are not a recipe for daily behavior. Just like the Bible is not a recipe for daily behavior.
And I would agree that the Bible as well has very violent components. The difference is that Jews and Christians, to a large extent, have gone through a renaissance. They've reformed. But much of the Muslim world is still living in the Stone Age. Not all of them. There are many of them that are.
Stone Age. So if they're living in the Stone Age, maybe you can give me an explanation why Israel is so fond of one of the more conservative and more totalitarian Arab Muslim countries in the world, namely the UAE, partly Saudi Arabia, also Bahrain. All of a sudden, when they are willing to make business with you, you forget about their religiosity, you forget about their intolerance to civil rights, their totally disregarding of female rights, of LGBT. All of a sudden, they are good Arabs. Why are they good Arabs? Because they are willing to do some business with you. Okay, I am not hypocrite. If you want to condemn Arabs as they are and Muslims as they are all over the board, then also please condemn UAE and don't start to make business with them and don't think about Dubai as the next New York.
I don't think that they're genuine friends of ours, but I think that even enemies, everyone has interests, everyone has agendas. I don't think Qatar is a true friend. I think much of the Muslim world has accepted.
What is the difference between Qatar and Bahrain, or Qatar and the UAE? The
not much.
Qatar is not
Amir,
willing to do business with you, and UAE is willing. That's the only difference.
Amir, the reality is that some Muslim countries have come to the conclusion that trying to defeat Israel the juice isn't worth the squeeze. They've tried it. Many of them still would try it if they felt they had the opportunity, but much of them have realized it's better to work with them than against them. They've tried in 48, 67, they've tried in all these wars. They weren't successful. They had opportunity after opportunity to wipe Israel off the map. How many more opportunities are we going to give them?
Persian Gulf countries never tried to wipe Israel off the map. And you know and I know that both UAE and Bahrain and Qatar and Oman and Saudi Arabia are all together a bunch of Bedouins with oil reservoirs, and all of them are corrupt, and all of them are very, very highly conservative, and both of them treat women as slaves and treat LGBT people as sick, that in the best case scenario can still live as slaves, and in the worst case scenario should die. But when it comes to the UAE, they are amazing. Why they are amazing? Because they are doing business with you. And if there is one thing I hate, it is hypocrisy. You want to say, I cannot stand Islamist countries, Islamist culture because they are retarded, because they are not tolerant. Okay, then boycott all of them. Don't boycott just Yemen and Palestinians and Hamas. There is no difference in the conservatism between Hamas and UAE. This is the truth.
I mean, one of them is actively trying to destroy us and the other one isn't. I think any Jew that has half a brain doesn't actually think that the UAE is a genuine lover of Israel. But at the end of the day, if they're not actively seeking to destroy us, then let's try to be on good terms the best we could.
You know how many times I heard as a criticism over supporting Hamas or supporting Palestinians in general. How many times I heard the statement, look, if you are LGBT in Gaza, they will kill you. Okay. Don't know if it's right or wrong, but I can tell you one thing for sure. The way you are going to be treated as LGBT in Gaza is more or less similar to the way that you're going to be treated as LGBT in UAE. And for one reason or another, UAE in Israeli eyes is considered heaven on earth, and Gaza is considered hell. And I'm telling you, LGBT-wise, same thing, same.
Okay. So then with your logic, we should create another one of these states? We should give the Palestinians another one of these fucked up states? All these Muslim countries, 20 some odd, that's 20 something Arab countries, over 50 Muslim countries, and they need another one? Meaning we should give up a tiny little country the size of New Jersey that was conquered by them before we reconquered it. And we have to, according to you, create another one of these unfree, undemocratic countries because it'll make them happy. Why is that?
I just remind you that the United States has a very, very soft spot for banana republics, and not only in the Middle East. Trump in particular is fond of dictators. Every time he comes to talk with a dictator, he's like, he's a nice guy. This guy from Syria, Giuliani, nice guy. Putin, nice guy. All of them, nice guys. Every time he sees a person and he gives him some gift, he's a nice guy. To your question, my answer is that actually the right perspective is not whether you should give them another state or not, because they already have so many states. But, and by the way, you can go further and say maybe the actual number of states should even be larger, because there are so many Arab countries that are composed of different tribes, and you can divide them. So maybe it's not like, I don't know, 22 Arab countries. Maybe they can have 47 Arab countries. But the question is whether
they have enough. They know how to. They fucked up enough of their own countries. They have enough. No,
enough.
Okay.
I can tell you that the question that should be asked is whether they have ongoing, consistent presence in this piece of land for centuries. And the truth is that they have. You cannot deny it. You cannot deny the Arab presence in Israel, whether you call them Palestinians or Arabs or locals or, I don't know, upgraded Bedouins, call them as you want to call them. You cannot deny the fact that for 1,700 years, they have been living here. And I'm asking you ask me all the time, and now I'm asking you, how many years consistently and consequently should a group of people live at a certain place in order to be considered indigenous? How many years?
I remember you.
Is not
Yeah,
enough.
so
They need
I'm
to live
actually.
1,500. How many years?
I'm glad that you bring this up, because I heard you having this discussion on more than one of these podcasts. I would agree that there's a good number of them that are indigenous. As you know, many of them came during the wave of Jewish immigration. How many, we don't exactly know. But they knew, let's be very honest, since you're a straight shooter, they knew, whether they were Arab, Greek, Turkish, they came knowing that the Jews would bring prosperity. They were well aware of this. So the ones that have stayed here for 1,000 years, sure, they're indigenous. But at the end of the day, if we're calling a spade, land belongs to whoever conquers it or purchases it. That's all that really makes a difference. Nobody throughout history has given any solitary fuck whether you had this claim or that claim. Throughout history, people want a land. They come up with all kind of rationale as to why they deserve it. They get on a ship, they get on horseback, they get in cars, they go in tanks, they fight the enemy. If they defeat the enemy, it now becomes theirs. If you want to talk about who deserves it, nobody deserves it. The Jews and Arabs had an opportunity to split it. The Arabs decided they wanted to go to war. You want to say, oh, well, what else should they do? That was their decision. They made that choice. They lost the wars. They tried again. They lost again. They continued to try, and they continue to try, and they continue to lose. At some point or another, fuck it. Okay? There's 20% of them living in the country. They should have their freedoms. We now have to figure out what happens with the Gazans. We have to figure out what happens.
20%. No, sorry that I have to stop you.
Go ahead.
But Raffi, you are simply wrong. Number-wise.
Okay, I'm listening.
Look, there are first the percent of Arabs in Israel is a bit above 20. It's 21, 22. But that's not the point. The main point is semantics. That a couple of hundreds of thousands, but okay. The main point is that
Amir, 20% is already a huge number. There's nowhere near that many Jews in any of these countries, other countries.
But the point is that you somehow forget 2 to 2.5 million Palestinians living in the West Bank, and 2 million Palestinians, even after the awful genocide of the last war, still living in Gaza, a bit less than 2 million Palestinians. And what do you expect them? You expect them to evaporate? If they didn't evaporate during this awful war, they are not going to evaporate. They are not. So I'm asking you, what are you actually suggesting to do with them? Keep them as slaves? Keep them as what?
I'm going to give you my very frank thoughts. First of all, we love to talk about 77 years of a supposed Nakba, but we completely ignore 1,400 years of persecution of Mizrahi Jews in the Middle East. And people like to say, oh, it was so wonderful. You can go on Google and look through a massive list long before 1948, of persecution after persecution of Jews. Forget about the Holocaust, forget about all the pogroms, the Spanish, and all these things. Strictly looking at the Mizrahi Jews, there is a long list of terrible atrocities that happened to them. So the Arab world wants to say, oh, 77 years, you did this and you did that. What about all of the time, the 1,400 years Are we supposed to forget that? Are the Jews supposed to just continue to take it? Well, after 1,400 years of persecution, we decided enough was enough. We came and built a country. We're tired of being at the whim of our host countries. They're not treating us well. But the Arabs don't like it. Oy vey, they don't like it. Let's apologize. We don't want to offend them, the poor people. Oy vey. At some point, enough is enough, Amir. At some point, listen, again, it's not that I don't have empathy. It's not that I don't want to live together in peace. I absolutely do. But at some point, and this is why I go back to the tribal point that I'm making, at some point you have to look at your family and say, if the other people don't get the best bargain, but I know that I can ensure the survival of my people and my family, I need to do what has to be done. Now, when I say I need to do what has to be done, there's context. We'll talk about this. I mean ensuring our survival. Now, just a quick caveat to give you an analogy.
I don't. Sorry, you didn't answer my question.
What was your question?
What is your solution? What do you suggest? What do you think that these Arabs will simply now go on lorries and start shifting their belongings and evaporate? I don't understand. What is your suggestion?
Okay, I'm going to answer that, but then I want to go back to my challenge with you about the 1,400 years. With the Gazans, I believe that, and it's tough to do. It's tough to there is no simple solution to this conflict. If there was, it would have been done by now. I think we can both agree. This is one of the toughest things to figure out. The Gazans at this point have three choices. They can either live in peace with us, they can leave in peace, they can go somewhere else, or they can rest in peace, or they can go to war with us again and again and again, and the same things are going to happen. They have to, at some point, and I'm not saying that we don't have any responsibilities and that we don't have to make certain choices. Of course we do. But to put all of the onus on Israel and treat the Gazans as if they're little children and have no ability to make their own choices as adults is asinine. At some point, they have to make a choice as to whether they're willing to exist and live, or whether their entire existence is based on getting rid of ours. Because up until now, all that they want to do, not to say that they didn't build anything in Gaza, I've seen restaurants and hotels, but their main focus has been, and again, this is why I go back to my religious point, their main focus has been, Israel is illegitimate, Zionist, Zioni, this, that, and the third. And we will never be satisfied until we wage war and eventually beat them. And so
because you live on their land. This is the truth. Now, I'm not saying that the
okay, so let's let them. Okay, so then they should. So let's roll over and die, Amir. Fine. Okay, so we took their land. Let's let them conquer us and fuck us. But you never
suggested any compensation. The same compensation that you ask for in Europe for your property. All of a sudden, when it comes to Palestinians, they should simply accept it. And you know what? They don't.
What about Mizrahi?
They wouldn't accept it.
But Amir, what about compensation for all the Mizrahi Jews that lost all of their things?
I will answer. First, to a great extent, it's a pompous saga. Why it's a pompous saga? Because let's be honest, we are not talking like the Palestinians living here until 48 were not the most affluent population. The Jews living in Libya and in Yemen were also not the most affluent.
Some of them were. Some of them were very wealthy.
Yeah, I heard this story. Yes, all of Iraq belonged to us. We were the.
But Amir, you could shrug it off, but it's not just. I hate to break it to you.
We were having rights to the estate of the King of Morocco. Yes, I know these stories.
There were Mizrahi Jews that were very affluent, and you know this. To negate that is it's not true. You know that there were some very rich Mizrahi Jews.
Like the richest.
There were many very poor Ashkenazi Jews. There still are. Yeah. Okay.
Now, a couple of issues here. First. Most of the discrimination that you're talking about of Jews in Arab countries refers to a period wherein Arabs were not ruling those countries. They were ruled mainly by Turkish Ottomans, partly by European mandate. The period of time in which Jews were actually living in Arab-ruled land was a very, very short period, because Arab countries received independence around mid-40s. Israel was established in 48.
But that doesn't
and
help
then
your case. That doesn't help your case. That just leads me into like an amazing point. But go on. Yeah, I'm listening.
Now, the second point, if you take an issue with Iraq or Libya or Algeria or whatever about the property that they confiscated, maybe you have a point. You know what? Yeah, I think that here and there at least you have a good point. But Palestinians should not pay the price, and I will say even further. Palestinians are actually paying the price for the persecution of Jews in Europe. If there was justice in this world, Jews should have established a state in East Germany and not in Palestine. Because the persecution of Jews in the Second World War occurred where? In Europe. Done by whom? By Germans. And you punish Palestinians for what? What did they do? What? Because the Mufti once took a picture with Hitler? Are you kidding me? You don't punish Germany, you punish Palestine. And you think this is justice?
I have a great answer for you.
And I'll tell you, for the benefit of all of us, having an Israel, I'm against the Jewish state in general, but if there has to be a Jewish state, East Germany is the location, the perfect location.
Okay, so then I guess Mizrahi Jews wouldn't be allowed there then, because they're not from there. So
I don't know. You're going with me into details. If you ask me, those Mizrahi Jews belong to Levantines, belong to Levant, but it's not the point. You want me to accept them? I will accept them to solve the problem. Okay.
But
They're
that's
not my
but
taste. Okay, I'm willing to have my own taste. I'm willing to have. You are like forcing me, a European person like me. You are forcing me to mingle with culture that is not mine.
Amir,
but
Amir,
that's not the
Amir,
point.
I'm going to say something, and I hope you'll be open to understanding this. Again, you're a smart guy. You know, you have such a connection to Europe. The Europeans, the Germans, they didn't see us as European like they did. We were trying so hard. The Jews in Germany, we're Germans. Forget about Judaism. We don't care about being Jewish. We're Germans first. We love being Germans. We're proud. Look how much we contributed. They were some of the most atheist people, a lot of them, just like you. They didn't care. They had Judaism meant nothing to them. When it came to hopping onto the cattle cars, they were sent just as quickly as the ultra-Orthodox and the shtetls. The Europeans didn't consider us Europeans. They didn't consider us European enough for sure when it came down to it. The Mizrahi Jews, hold on, let me finish. The Mizrahi Jews were considered Musawi by the Muslims. They weren't considered Arab enough either. So when it's convenient, the Europeans, so when we go back to Israel, the anti-Zionists in the West are going, oh, no, you're white colonizers. But when we were in Europe, we were considered Semites. So whichever way we go, people are unhappy about it. When it's convenient, they'll call us European. When it's convenient, they'll call us Semites. When it's convenient, they'll call the Mizrahi Jews Arabs. When it's convenient, they'll call them non-Arab Musawi. So if I'm going to sit here and wait for other people to define where I belong and what I am, I'll never have anything. I'll have my hands tied and I'll be at the whim of whatever they say I am. So as far as going to West or East Germany, they kicked the Ashkenazi Jews out of there. So now we should go back to the place they kicked us out of, that they said we don't belong in. This is the reality is we came back to the place we were supposed to go to. There's any other place wouldn't have made any sense. The Jewish origin, the origin of the Jewish people, whether you're religious or not, whether you believe in God or not, is from the Middle East. You want to say Abraham was from Mesopotamia, fine. The Jewish people, the whole origin story of the Jewish people comes from Israel, comes from Judea, comes from Jerusalem. This is the cornerstone of it. All billions of people agree. So for us to go to Germany, it wouldn't have sustained itself. The Jews would have had no fight. They wouldn't have had a fight to. The reason why Israelis have such a strong morale to fight for the country is because they feel a connection to it spiritually, from their identity as Jews. You put us back in Germany. It's like millions of us were killed in Germany. How there won't be a long-term morale for the Jews to fight for the land they don't even feel they belong in because they were slaughtered there. Do you get what I'm saying?
I hear you. to say that I accept it? No, I don't accept it. The problem in your claim, in your reasoning, is that it simply ignores the passage of time. What was relevant 100 years ago, almost 100 years ago, is not necessarily relevant now. And yes, Jews were definitely persecuted in Germany in the 1930s, but now we are not in the 1930s, we are closer to the 2030s, and things have changed. This is one thing. And second thing is that...
So that negates that history repeats itself. You're just assuming, oh, things were bad over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, nonstop throughout history. But now suddenly, oh, things are different. Yeah, like history never made a difference.
History is not a clock that goes back all the time to the same position and all the time shows the same hour within 24 hours. No, sometimes history repeats itself, sometimes no. Depends on the factors. It's a very, very complicated issue. It's not that there is some magic self-correction or self-repeating mechanism according to which things always go back to the starting point. This is one thing. And the second thing is that there is something very unreasonable in conquering another land, punishing another nation for sins committed totally elsewhere by totally different people. Sorry, in this point, the Palestinian argument is very, very strong to say that because the Mufti took a picture with Hitler, then because of that, Palestinians should be expelled from Israel.
He didn't just take a picture, but it wasn't just a picture.
It's a very weak claim.
Amir,
No, because look, the Holocaust was committed by Germans, not by Palestinians, no matter how many times you slice it and dice it. This is the truth. What you
not
want
just
to tell
about
me
the Holocaust.
that Auschwitz
Amir,
was built by the Mufti? No, Auschwitz was not built by the Mufti.
Yeah, but it wasn't just a picture. The Mufti had plans. It wasn't just, oh, let's take a picture together.
The Mufti had plans, but Germans have committed plans. They had plans. I also had vision. You have dreams. I dream about living in a palace, in a Baroque palace in Austria, but I'm fucked up in a village in Israel. Maybe you can help me as a real estate.
Amir, I think you should. I think listen, first of all, I think from a psychological perspective, and you tell me if you disagree, I think you're cynical to the point where you kind of remind me of Larry David to a large extent.
Thank you very much.
You're a smart guy, but I think where you could focus on positives, you choose to focus on negatives. And I think that you're going to be correct on certain things, for sure, no doubt. There are things we'll agree on. But in terms of the way of looking at things, there's so many positive things about Israel. And to you refuse to acknowledge or look at any of them. To you, it's everything about Israel, everything about the existence of it is bad. So it should be dissolved. And we should instead instate an Arab/Muslim country, which would inevitably be much worse for its inhabitants. But in order not to offend other people, we should be willing to take it on the chin, or we should be willing to die for it. So the Muslims persecuted us, the Christians persecuted us, but let's not inconvenience anyone. We should just go back to being persecuted. Why have our own army? Why inconvenience the world with our problems? That's essentially what I'm hearing.
I distinguish between idealism and practicality, and I'm a very practical person. People often ask me, what is your ideology, predominant ideology, leading ideology in your life? Are you a communist? Are you capitalist? Are you conservative? Are you liberal? And I'm telling them, first and foremost, I'm a plumber. I'm trying to solve problems on a small scale and not expand them if it is not necessary. So ideally, what I would have done is, in the Middle Ages, accept the generous offer of the Inquisition, get rid of all of these Jewish tradition, schmadition life that only caused us, not them, caused us problems, caused us Auschwitz, caused us all the prosecutions, all the pogrom. Why on earth do I need it? Why? In order to eat kosher food? No. This is what I would have ideally done. Get rid of it. Say, yes, Christ is the Messiah. Forget about everything. Those synagogues are very shabby buildings compared to churches. Goodbye. Thank you. Yes, I accept. Sorry. This is what I would have done. Is it practical? No, it is not practical. Again, what would I have really done about Israel in 1948? Say that I want to be a British colony and later be annexed to the UK forever. Not establish a Jewish state, not Arab state, nothing of this sort. Why on earth do I need it? You really need another Levantine country in the Middle East with immigrants from Yemen, what I call Arabs with Yarmulke? No, the answer is no. Can I take back the clock? Also no. So far ideals. Now about practicality.
I'm grateful for them. Let me tell you, man, if Israel didn't have Mizrahi Jews, I'm going to say something very blunt, Amir. If we didn't have Mizrahi Jews and all we had were secular, progressive, woke Ashkenazim, the country would have been long gone by now. Yes, the Ashkenazim developed it; they were responsible for founding it. But if we now did not have Mizrahi Jews who understood the Arabs, who understood the way the Arab mind thinks, yeah, Israel would have been destroyed a long time ago. So I'm grateful for them.
The fact is that those Ashkenazi Jews in 1948 committed enough war crimes for the whole century. And managed to beat 7 Arab countries much better than Israel has done in later wars, with the exception of 67, which was still, honestly, mainly predominantly done by Ashkenazi.
They beat them in the earlier years because they had no choice, and they were willing to be more brutal because war, unfortunately, I think now in 2025 we have this cutesy idea of what war is. War is meant to defeat your enemy, not to bring them to their knees and then say, okay, you've had enough. Let's end this, and then you'll have the opportunity to rearm and fight us again. This is our biggest mistake. Israel, in recent history, has been fighting these wars, and at the last moment, at crunch time, we always say, oh, okay, we've been too harsh. Let's take a step back. The enemy says, oh, you're not finished? Oh, okay, great. They take their time, they build tunnels, they rearm, and even more so, our government will fund these groups like idiots. Why? Because we don't want to address the problem. So we say, oh, let's have some quiet. Let's fund the people who want our own destruction. It's ridiculous. This is largely part of the issue because we're not willing to deal with the issues. We're not willing to get to the root of the problem. All we do is we try to fix the branches. And so we're in this inevitable state of nowhereness.
Maybe it's impossible to get to the root of the problem. In order to get to the root of the problem, the real implication is to commit war crimes at the scale that will make the Nazis very, very innocent and benevolent people. Even Israel doesn't want to go to that level, maybe.
Amir, it's ridiculous. The reality is you have a group of people that made a choice on October 7th. They're adults. They made a decision. They took hostages. They knew what would happen. They knew this good and well. If the Gazans are allowed to come in and attempt to conquer us, and we're supposed to just sit by and take it, I mean, what do you think Israel should have done? Now, I know you want to say Israel knew about it. That's a separate conversation. The Gazans, many of which were civilians, came in on October 7th. Their goal was to kill as many people as possible. If they could have, they would have taken the whole country over. They knew they probably weren't going to be able to do it, but they were hoping maybe Hezbollah was going to step in, maybe Iran would step in. They attempted what they attempted. Now that Israel exists, I know maybe you don't like the idea that it does, but it does. What should Israel have done differently in order to actually get anywhere? What should Israel have done differently?
My analysis of October 7th is simply different. My analysis of October 7th is that the Palestinians were aiming at more or less a similar plan to the plan of Egypt and Syria also, but mainly Egypt in 73. Egypt was aiming at a limited war in order to go back to the discussion table and to reclaim the Sinai Peninsula, because Israel was sitting on the bank of the Suez Canal, unwilling to compromise on anything. And I don't think, actually well known, that Egypt was not really planning to conquer all of Israel. They stopped after 20 kilometers. Why? Because they said this for us is enough in order to resume discussions, go back to the discussion table, go back to the drawing table. And Hamas was more or less doing the same thing, but I agree with you, they were more cruel. They were more cruel because they were after years of occupation. I'm not justifying their cruelty, but with the exception of this additional cruelty, it was the same plan. And in a way, they actually succeeded because, look, the Palestinian problem, which was off the table, is now back on the table. So in a way, you can say that they didn't really lose. I'm now talking realpolitik, not whether it is accords or doesn't accord with my personal view.
It's a chess game. Unfortunately, the Palestinians are seen as some of the lowest class in the Arab and Muslim world. The Muslim world doesn't really give much of a shit about them, aside from the fact that they're fighting the Jews. If the Palestinians weren't at war with the Jews, they wouldn't matter whatsoever. Mahmoud, are you familiar with Mahmoud Darwish?
Nice poet. I'm not into poetry so much.
Okay, so there was a famous clip. He was talking to a Jewish girl. It might have been in a movie. I don't exactly remember what it was. And he said the only reason why the Palestinian people have any sort of relevance in the world is because they're enemies with the Jewish people.
تعلمين لماذا نحن الفلسطينيين مشهورون؟ لأنكم أنتم أعداؤنا. إن الاهتمام بنا نابع من الاهتمام بالمسألة اليهودية. نعم، الاهتمام بك وليس بي أنا. إذن نحن قليلو الحظ في أن تكون إسرائيل هي عدونا، لأنها تحظى بمؤيدين لا حد لهم في العالم، ونحن أيضا محظوظون لأن تكون إسرائيل عدونا، لأن اليهود هم مركز اهتمام العالم. لذلك ألحقتم بنا الهزيمة وأعطيتمونا الشهرة. لقد ألحقتم بنا الهزيمة ولكن منحتمونا الشهرة.
אנחנו שר התעמולה שלכם.
نعم، أنتم وزارة دعايتنا، لأن العالم يهتم بكم أكثر مما يهتم بنا، وليست لدي أي أوهام حول هذا الأمر.
And had because the Jews, the world is enamored by the Jewish people. They've always been obsessed with the Jewish people one way or another. And if the Palestinians weren't at war with them, they would be irrelevant. And so the Muslim world has been using the Palestinians and Palestinianism to essentially throw millions of people into a fire while they get to sit back and say, all right, Palestinians, good for you. You're the Mujahideen. We're proud of you. Thank you for doing the Lord's work. Keep fighting the Jews. Die for Islam. Die for Islam. And it's a shame. It's a shame because most of the Muslim world at this point isn't willing to join in that fight. But they're more than happy to throw them into the fire. They treat the Palestinians like crap. They don't give them citizenship in their countries. If they do give them any sort of citizenship or resident status, they're at the lower rungs of society. They don't give a shit about them. And that's the craziest part. They don't honor them like.
I agree with you. They are not willing to absorb our leftovers. This is true, and it's very natural. But you can say also that many countries don't exactly think about Jews as the best example and the most elitist part of their nation, and they are accepting them because they've been sitting there for ages and they have citizenship. So. Almost same. But I don't see that you are negating or contradicting my analysis. The Palestinians were here aiming very clearly at trying to recharge the Palestinian problem, trying to make it again a hot topic when it was off the table. And in this aspect, they succeeded. Whether you like it or not, they succeeded.
Yeah, and the only reason they succeeded is because we allowed them to. The reality is they didn't succeed. They succeeded in getting the world to feel sorry for them. This is what they got.
It's also a kind of success.
No, but it's not going to achieve anything because the reality is what do they really want from your secular mind, from like your academic way of looking at it? You truly believe that they actually want their own state, and say la vie, they'll be happy. But the reality is they're not going to be happy with that. If we split Israel in half right now, and we gave them half of it, and we took half of it, they wouldn't be happy with that. And to even try to do that is committing suicide. We've tried it. We gave them Gaza. We gave them this. We gave them that. It's not enough because they fundamentally believe that Jerusalem is their capital. They conquered it, it's theirs, and they are never going to accept Jewish rule in this land. The only way they'll accept it is if they have no choice but to do so. And up until now, since 1948, we've been giving them the belief that it's actually possible. And they're playing the long game. The Palestinians in the greater Muslim world are playing the long game, thinking eventually this war of attrition will tire the Jews out. And if we keep fighting, we'll eventually beat them. And a lot of us, and no offense, but I think you're one of these people that genuinely takes them at their word and believes that what they want is a state. And sadly, it's a self-destructive way of looking at it. It's not that I don't want to live alongside them if it's possible, but they have to be willing to accept that this is a land ruled by Jewish people. It's a tiny, tiny land ruled by Jews. Much of that entire region practically is ruled by Muslims. If they don't like it, they can go live in a Muslim country. But this idea that they get to have all these countries and they get to have all their rules, mistreating women, mistreating gay people, and we have to constantly make sacrifices and compromises, enough is enough already. Sometimes you have to give people the finger. Sometimes you have to say, fuck you. Not you, but sometimes I don't need to constantly keep making them happy over and over and over again. Yes, did they get the bad end of the stick? Yes. Did we do things we shouldn't have done? Do we still do things we shouldn't do? Absolutely. We're not a perfect people, by no means. But at some point, if we want to have our own military that protects us, then we're going to have to do things that upset people. And if other people, this is just the reality of, another thing before you say what you want to say. Do you have anyone do you have anyone that you love dearly, that you genuinely love with all your heart? A family member, a friend? Is there anyone that you have a tremendous amount of love for?
Only Zacharia, my dog. He's so cute. He's now outside. He's already very old, unfortunately.
Okay, but you love your dog with all your heart, right?
I prefer my dog to all the people, including Palestinians.
Let me ask you a question. If Hamas kidnapped your dog, put your dog in a tunnel, and they said, listen, we're going to do the most horrible things to your dog. We're not only going to kill your dog, we're going to torture your dog. We're going to, you name it, we're going to do the worst things to your dog. And the Israeli government came and said, listen, we know how much you love your dog. We can't guarantee that we'll be able to save your dog. But if we do attempt to save your dog, we might have to kill 50,000 people. If we don't do this, though, if we don't take action, your dog's a goner. Your dog's dead. Your dog is going to get tortured. Are you going to let your dog die, or are you going to say, do it? I feel sorry for the people that are going to suffer, but I want my dog back. What are you going to do?
It's a fascinating question, but you know that in reality, Israel could have saved more hostages if it was willing to compromise and to make a deal with Hamas earlier. This is the truth.
Okay, and here's but that doesn't answer my question.
But it is the truth.
Okay, but Amir, that doesn't answer my question.
Signed the ceasefire agreement with Hamas, not in November. When did we sign? October, I think. September 25. If we signed this deal in November, December 23, then more hostages would have come alive.
Okay, so I have an answer. So I haven't answered that, but you didn't answer my question. What would you do if that was the only option? There's no other option. You either your dog.
This is not the situation. You're asking a hypothetical question, which is simply irrelevant.
It's not irrelevant. It's just a question that I don't think you want to answer, because the reality is you would be probably willing to kill 50,000 people to save your dog.
We are now talking about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and not about my hypothetical
But Amir, this is important because it puts things into perspective, because it allows you to put yourself in the shoes of other people. But
this is not similar to this is simply sorry. I like you very much, and I appreciate your reasoning and your interview. But Raffi, in this case, you are simply twisting the reality so that it would fit with your ideology. But the reality is that more life would be saved if we compromise, at least in the short term. And as for the long term, if you're talking about what will happen in 200 years, sorry, I don't give a damn. I don't give a damn what will happen in 200 years.
So I'm going to answer. So listen, I don't like that you're avoiding the question, and I understand why you're avoiding it, but we'll move on. I think if the viewers are going to be able to make their inferences, but I know what you would choose. It's very clear, and it was important to mention it. It's very relevant. I think in terms of hostages, the fact that Israel continues to be in this position where Hamas is taking hostages is because Israel is incentivizing them to do so. And now, when we have hostages, of course, we want them back. But if Israel continues to release thousands of terrorists every time we have hostages, we will continue to perpetuate this cycle, because the Palestinians know that this is their biggest bargaining chip. As long as they take hostages, they have our hand. That's their checkmate. They put us in this position where we have to prolong the war. More of their people die. Hamas doesn't care about their people because they're religious fundamentalists. They care about their greater goal of destroying Israel. They're willing to kill their people to do it. And so they take hostages knowing that we're going to release the exact people who are going to go and take more hostages. So we're going to release more terrorists who are going to take more hostages and release more terrorists. And the cycle never ends. And so as much as I want to have all the hostages back, as much as I wanted them to come back the moment they were taken, if Israel is that quick to make these negotiations and give Hamas what they want, it tells the rest of our enemies that that is the best thing they can do, and they'll continue to do it over and over and over again. At some point, Israel has to make a very strong statement to say, this cannot continue to happen. And the saddest part is it doesn't just hurt the Israelis, it hurts the Palestinians. That's the biggest problem, is you have to consider that every time the Hamas, Islamic Jihad, Palestinians as a whole take Israeli hostages, it causes death on the other side. This is the biggest issue. It's not just a matter of, Israeli hostages suffer. The Palestinians suffer as a result. So the Israelis have to figure out a way to prevent hostages from being taken. It's not just, let's negotiate every time. No, we have to fix the issue. We have to make sure that our enemies don't feel that they have the omets and the balls to take our hostages in the first place.
Oof. My answer to you consists of a number of arguments. First argument is that there is a kind of unwritten contract between the state and its citizens. I'm now talking from an internal Israeli perspective. From this perspective, people would not be willing to live in Israel if they know that if and when they are taken as hostages, they would not be necessarily soon coming back in a deal, because according to the Israeli strategy, it's better to keep them in Gaza and not take them immediately back, because in the long run it pays off. Because then what I would as Israeli do is simply say, forget about this fucked up country, I am moving out. And people are doing like me, and you can see that now there is a negative migration balance in Israel. You see that the number of newcomers is smaller than the number of immigrants, and those who immigrate are not exactly people from poor towns like Ashdod, Ashkelon, Bet Shan, but people who have the possibility because they have the passport, they have the job, they have the migration capabilities. So this is one point. The second point is that you ignore the basis and the reasoning of the Palestinian for doing it. You think that the reasoning is just because they think that this is the way to bring Israel on its knees. But why do they want to bring Israel on its knees? And again, you say it's because of religion. No, I'm telling you because they don't want to be second-rate slaves enclaved in Gaza. That's it. And you don't offer them any viable alternative. So this is what they do. Offer an alternative.
So that's why Gaza looks the way it does, Amir. They need to their plan is not working. I know you think it is. I know you think they're not getting a Palestinian state.
I'm not saying that their plan is working. I totally agree with you that the plan is not working. The plan is not working because Israel suffocates them.
No, they don't. They should not have a Palestinian state. It's not going to bring peace. If I knew that it
nothing, what you will get is terror. As simple as that.
Okay, no,
offer nothing. Listen, this is what you will get.
At some point, if this continues to happen, they will actually face genocide. That's the saddest part. The saddest part is this cannot sustain itself. Meaning this is
Israel
eventually...
is unable strategically to commit genocide. In terms of willingness, in terms of readiness, Israel is unfortunately ready to commit genocide. But the geopolitical circumstances protect the Palestinians. Israel is not capable of committing genocide because the eventual outcome in terms of international relations is so harsh that Israel sadly has to give up on its intentions to become the next Nazi of the Middle East.
I vehemently disagree.
That's the harsh reality.
No, it's
and
not
I'm
the
very
case.
sad to say that, but this is the harsh reality. Because it would mean totally cutting all the ties with Europe, cutting ties with almost all the rest of the world, living in complete isolation. And Israel is incapable and unwilling to do that. That's it. Not because we have any mercy on Palestinians. Israel has zero mercy on Palestinians. Israel is a merciless country. Merciless
That's
nation,
not true.
merciless culture.
That's definitely not the case.
My perspective.
And that's definitely not the case. We don't want to. We don't want to. It's just that they need, the Palestinians are going to have to come to terms with the fact that this is a Jewish ruled country. Until whether they like it or not. You keep saying, oh, why should they? Why will they? They don't have to. That's their choice. If they want to continue to not accept it, then they're going to be in this perpetual state of violence. And the reality is that Israel, Amir, Israel,
because you ignore a scenario wherein the president of the United States is not Donald Trump, but a progressive liberal from the Democrat Party. And the climate in Europe is less preoccupied with immigration and more preoccupied with, I don't know, civil rights or environment or many other issues, not necessarily battling immigration. And then all of a sudden you are in totally different circumstances and you get cold feet. You don't get any support from Europe, complete cold feet from the US, maybe even worse than cold feet. And then you have no other alternative but to compromise. You say that I'm hallucinating? Maybe, but it almost happened and it certainly went in that direction in the glory days, the golden age of Obama. And this golden age may come back and may come back even in brighter colors.
Yeah.
And then you are in a problem. And at last I will be smiling, seeing all of those settlements being dismantled.
Okay, listen, it's definitely not going to happen, but this is also why
you mean to say that the Democrats will never win elections in the US?
No. It's not that the Democrats may not win again. There's a very good chance, history has shown there's a very good chance that America may have a very anti-Israel president at some point. And what will happen? What will be a result? Most of the Jews will go to Israel. Not all of them. Some Jews may go to other places, but the majority of them will end up going to Israel. And what will then happen is if the Palestinians continue to fight, it'll be harder and harder. You're going to have, now you're arguing there's brain drain from Israel. You're going to have the exact opposite. You're going to have a lot of intellectual minds coming to Israel. You'll have a military that's getting increasingly stronger. At the end of the day, our enemies, you're talking about all the pressure and the hatred that we're getting. Countries don't care if other countries are moral. They care if other countries are powerful and can benefit them. Oh, you have gas? Fantastic. Oh, your weapons are effective? Great, we'll buy from you. This is the reality of human nature. They see Israel, much of the world, whether they admit it openly or not, they see that Israel is a powerhouse. They're a tech powerhouse. They're a military powerhouse. And as long as they can continue to be as powerful as they are despite their size, countries are going to do business with them, whether that's outwardly or under the table. That's it. Like Israel will benefit.
It may end up like South Africa in the 80s, and to be South Africa in the 80s is not such a good scenario, and the best demonstration and proof that it is not a good scenario is that eventually South Africa decided to cancel the apartheid because they simply couldn't handle the isolation. And I can give you also American examples. For example, America withdrew from Afghanistan. America withdrew from Vietnam. America withdrew from Iraq. Did America withdraw from these countries because it could no longer handle these wars? No, it could handle the wars. It could continue to occupy Iraq and Afghanistan. It could continue to battle in the jungles of South Vietnam. But the conclusion was that it was not wealthy enough. That's it. And at some point, an anti-Israeli sentiment in the US can say just that. Look, they can say, we don't care any longer. What we see there is probably not genocide and sub-genocide towards the Palestinians, definitely not something that we should invest in. And that's it. And we take a step backwards. And when they take a step backwards, who will support Israel? With all the Jews from all over the world immigrating. You cannot fight against the whole world. South Africa tried to do that. It didn't work.
We're not going to need to fight against the whole world. It's not a reality. The reality is as long as we're a powerful country, we will have allies. And the other reality is, as much as you paint Israel as this horrible, terrible place, day to day, it's a fair country. It's not perfect. It has plenty of issues, but considering it has as many enemies as it does quite well. It tries to make treaties. It tried the Abraham Accords. It tries to make peace with countries. It attempts to. If the Palestinians accepted Jewish rule, like much of the Arab Israelis did, then we can come to a semblance of peace. Will it ever be? I don't think the Middle East will ever be a perfectly peaceful place. I don't think the world will ever be a perfectly peaceful place. Human beings, whether they're religious or not, are going to fight on the grounds of women, on money, on status, on power. Human beings, unfortunately, do a lot of shitty things. We're tribal people. We find all these reasons to subjugate others. It's not a good thing. I don't like it. I wish it wasn't that way. I wish we lived in this utopian world where we all treated each other perfectly, and we all had $1 million and everything was great. It's not the way the world was created. That's why me personally, I have a belief in God, because I believe that all of this stuff was made. Now, again, we're not going to have a religious discussion. I have no interest in doing that. But my perspective is being that we can create a perfect world to the best of our ability, let's at least learn to live with each other. And this notion that unfortunately the Palestinian people as a collective, they want to destroy Israel. They're much more focused on destroying Israel than living in what they have. And you want to say, oh, it's not fair, then why should... This is where we are. Israel exists. There are millions of Jews in it. They have rulership over it. It is much more feasible and plausible for the Palestinian people at this point to say, you know what? We don't like it. We wish it wasn't the case, but this is the best we're going to have. And we're tired of fighting. We're tired of our kids being pushed into these circumstances. We should stop. Give me 1 second. We should stop glorifying martyrs. We should stop putting all these posters all over the place of our kids that fought the Zionists. All of these ideas, they're not moving the needle forward at all. They're putting themselves in the same predicament. The Jewish people we're traumatized. We've been persecuted over and over again. We feel our backs are against the wall. This is not French colonialism where the French have rule over Algeria, and if you fight them long enough, the French will pick up and go. The Jewish people feel rooted in this land. You might not yourself, but millions of Jews in and out of Israel feel a spiritual an ethnic, they feel it in many regards, a tie, a bond that can't be broken. They're willing to fight and die for this country because they feel they have no other option. And it's not like, again, it's not just some foreign colonial power that you can just. The Jewish people, they are gonna fight till the last breath.
How many years will people agree to serve every year 100, 150 days in reserve duty? At some point, people get tired. People want to have good life.
Amir, they are tired. They're exhausted. They don't want to do it anymore, but they're not willing to give up this country. And the thing is you're saying, oh, it's
like Eritrea. Okay, live like Eritrea. Mandatory, eternal military service. If you call it life, Go for it. Those who can move out will move out. You are going to be left with those who have no other option, with the poorer cohort, with those who are maybe more religious also, but people who simply have no option overseas. These are the ones who are going to stay. But I want to correct you on one other thing, or actually ask, when you say until the Palestinians accept Jewish rule over the land, what does it mean? Because you say, like the Arabs, within Israel. Now, the Arabs within Israel, 1948 Arabs, they have full citizenship rights, which means that they can vote to the parliament. Now, if you give those rights to Palestinians, you're going to have a 50-50 country. I don't think this is what you want. This is what you want. This
they'll have. You're right. They'll have resident status. It's not going to
have citizens. Okay, they are not going to accept it. They are not going to accept it. And you know what?
Amir,
not a single Western country will accept.
Amir, I understand that. There are Muslim countries that don't give citizen status to many of their citizens. In the UAE, a tiny minority in their country have citizenship. They don't get to constantly wage war on us and then complain, oh, well, we don't have full rights.
Let's say they are not complete citizens. It still means that you would actually give them the complete welfare benefit. You know how much it will cost? You have to pay. They will compete with you on every job. This is what you want. It's such a clear case where divorce, where respectful divorce is the right thing.
Amir, I understand. Listen, I understand you, but unfortunately, it's a much better alternative than this two-state option, because this two-state option will lead to the destruction of the state of Israel. That's what it'll lead to, and it's so in your mind. I don't want to speak for you, but this is just my speculation. Because you're an educated person, you're a professor at a college, you're well studied, you know history. From your perspective, it only makes sense logically. The best possible scenario is that the two people just shut up and agree to take one parcel of land. The Arabs take one part, the Jews take one part, and everybody's happy. I can totally understand why, from your perspective and the way you think, that makes sense. The problem is we're not dealing with millions of secular people on our doorstep. We're dealing with fundamentally religious people, deeply, deeply religious, ideological people. If everybody in the Levant was secular like yourself, didn't believe in God, then we likely very well could split the land into two states. But may I
remind you that you also represent a sect of people who are religious and believe in God. Sorry to say that, but this is the truth.
But no, and I understand that. But I, first of all, I believe in God, but I'm not this like religious. Day to day, I'm not practicing. I grew up religious. I have belief in God and all that. But you're dealing with the Muslim world. They are almost completely religious. They just, the idea that they're going to accept anything other than all of it is just not the case. They say it all the time.
You see Muslims in black and white, and I mean, we are in the world of color.
No, I don't. It's not true, Amir. It's not the case. I don't.
You see them in black and white. This is the truth. Yes, you see them in black and white.
I definitely don't. I can tell you why I don't. Absolutely not. There are many, many, many moderate Muslims. There are millions and millions of wonderful, wonderful Muslims. Absolutely. I believe the minority of Muslims are violent. The problem is the minority are the ones that hold the power. They're the ones that call the shots. They're the unfortunately the peaceful ones either don't want to step in the way and do something, or they don't have the ability to. So even if you want to argue that 10% of the overall Muslim world are violent and problematic, they have a tremendous amount of power, and they're
Israel refuses to deal with the Palestinian Authority, which is not religious and which consists of Muslims who are at least not extremely religious. But Israel rejects any participation.
But that's naive. But Amir, that's naive. The Palestinian Authority is not just some secular place. Yes, Ramallah. You could argue Ramallah has elements of secularism. But the Palestinian Authority is still...
the officers, the seniors those who hold senior positions in Palestinian Authority are not Muslim Brotherhood. That's a fact. They are simply not. They are actually opponents of Hamas.
They're in bed with them. They're in bed with them. Mahmoud Abbas is not a secular guy like yourself. Mahmoud Abbas is a God-believing religious person. He's not a... Mahmoud Abbas is a religious guy. It's not... Ahmed Tibi, religious guy.
Also believes in God. So what? Except for the fact that he still mandates from one party to another, you cannot say that there is anything religious about him. Yes, he says plenty of times that he believes in God. Trump says that he believes in God. That did it have any
Trump-
effect on his dating
No,
behavior
no.
in the past or present? No, he believes in God.
But listen, at the end of the day, Trump is not the one we're at odds with. Meaning, Trump plays a role. He plays a fundamental role, but he's not. He's the American president. I'm talking about these Palestinian leaders. You know, this is.
Look, you are eventually not. You can say that my solution is too good to believe in, or too good to accept. Maybe too good to be true. Maybe yes.
I mean,
but you are not offering any solution that is viable. You don't offer anything other than endless war. And I'm telling you, at some point, people will not be able to suffer, to sustain endless war.
Why is residence
You
that? Why is
you cannot have military service every year
Amir.
for 30 years for 3-4 months a year? It's not acceptable. People are not accept.
I think most Jews would rather have mandatory military service than be at the whim of
Every
other
year
countries.
for 30 years.
Hey, listen, first of all, I think many countries could benefit you see Israel you see military as a bad thing. You see military as this thing that shouldn't exist. But military, it was very good for a lot of people, meaning you go through training, it does incredible things for people. To you, you're not a fighting person. You don't have that way of somebody's got to fight, Amir. In every society,
you yourself, after doing military service, mandatory, which is not mandatory in your case, but basic service, you said, okay, this was my contribution so far, and I'm not contributing any further. You're not coming every year to do military.
Okay, so Amir, if I did,
and I'm not blaming you. It's natural. It's natural.
So if I did, listen, I grew up in America. I admit, because I grew up in America, that I like America. I'm used to it. The same way you're used to living in Israel. The difference is I don't shit on America and I don't shit on Israel. I love both places. But for me, it's not like I'm living in America and spending all my time telling you how terrible it is. If I felt America was such a terrible place, I wouldn't live there. I would leave. So
I want to relate to that. Let me relate to that. We have simply complete disagreement on the concept of citizenship. You, like many Israelis, and actually like many right-wing people, see citizenship as a kind of loyalty. You are loyal to the king. You are loyal to the kingdom. You have to show your loyalty. And I see citizenship as a basic right that I gained from birth by law. I don't owe anyone anything for this. Nothing. It's my right. It's actually my property. I'm even willing to negotiate selling it if you offer me a good price.
hey, Amir, I have an answer.
I'm not against.
I have a great answer for you.
I'm not against bazaar, but it's not something that I have to every time justify in my behavior.
I have a great answer. I understand that, and my answer for you is this: you get to have that viewpoint because an 18-year-old, whether you think he's stupid or not, whether you think he should or shouldn't be doing it, the fact of the matter is there's an 18-year-old that has no idea who you are that's willing to defend the country. And for what it's worth, that allows you to say, well, I don't owe anyone anything and I don't have to care about the collective. I get to just care about me and Zacharia. And that's all that really matters in this world. But somebody's son or daughter is willing to go out there, lose a leg, lose limbs. You want to say, oh, well, it shouldn't happen. Every country needs a military. And if they don't have their own military, they need another country to guarantee their safety. Puerto Rico, for example. So somebody is defending you, whether you like it or not. And you don't support the military that, whether you like it or not, is protecting you. The same quarrel I have with Hasidic Jews, and we'll agree on this, by the way. Hasidic Charedim should absolutely be giving some kind of service. If it's not a combat position, they should be doing Shirut Leumi. They should be doing something. I don't like that at all. I'm very upset about it. But to point your finger at Charedim, well, you're saying, well, I get to live in Tel Aviv and do all my comedy, and I have my dog, and I have a wonderful life, but I hate the country. It's a stupid country. It shouldn't exist. But some 18-year-old kid who barely started his life is willing to fight and protect you. He has no idea who you are. But to you, it's like, what an idiot. What do we need it for? But the reality is whether you like it or not, that's what he's doing. That's what he's doing.
I have a Romanian citizenship. Do I owe Romania anything? Do I feel that I owe Romania anything? The answer is zero. I have it from birth. This is the Romanian law. According to Romanian law, because mom was born in a territory that was once part of Romania, not now, and even though she has no cultural, never had, the family had zero cultural affinity to Romania, I still have Romanian citizenship. It's my right. I don't apologize for it. I don't never promised to support Romania or to stand for Romania or to fight for Romania. That's
so why
it.
should
It's
anyone
my right.
okay, so then should the government, if your life was in danger, according to your logic, being that you're also saying it's your right, but then you're also saying nobody owes you anything and you don't owe anyone anything. So if you don't owe anyone anything, then that should also mean that no one owes you anything. No?
To a great extent, yes. I mean,
So then
again,
why do you
depends
deserve
on
why do you deserve
depends on what you're
citizenship?
talking about. I think it's totally unjustified that if the police interferes every time somebody smashes something or steals something, they will take care of them and they will serve them and they will only not serve me. But basically, do I think that people have to die for me? No, nobody has to die for me.
But
I wouldn't die
but
for anyone. I don't expect anyone to die for me. I think it's
I
very
know
interesting
you
to
I
die.
know you wouldn't die for anyone, Amir. That I'm very certain about that. But and that's I'm very and the truth is we're always going to have people like that in the world. We're going to have people that are not willing to die for others, and we're going to have people that are willing to die for others. And the truth of the matter is if we didn't have people that were willing to die for others, then the society, if you have a society where there are no men that are willing to die for other people, that society will not continue to exist. You have to have people that say, I love my people. I'm part of a tribe. I love my people. I'm willing to defend them, even though I don't even know them personally. That's how you have a sustainable, that's how a country continues to exist, because they will have enemies that want to destroy them, whether it's Israel, whatever. And so you might not be willing to do that, Amir. But if every single Israeli thought like you, the country would be destroyed tomorrow. And so it's nice that you think that. It's nice that you think that way, but somebody has to pick up a gun. Somebody has to do Krav Maga. Somebody has to build muscle and be a strong person. I'm not saying this to throw shade at you. Just the reality is somebody's got to do the job. And to say like, oh, well, no one should do it because I wouldn't do it. Somebody's got to do the job. Somebody's got to put out the fires. Somebody's got to protect a woman if she's getting hurt. There has to be a man that's willing to put himself in danger for the betterment of other people.
You're very patriarchal. I didn't expect that from you, Raffi. You surprised me. You're very. It's not that you're not just conservative. You are really ultra patriarchal. Because at first I was thinking it's like a slip of the tongue that you say men have to protect and not people have to protect. But now I learned that actually you are automatically discharging 50% of the population from the duty, which is something that I don't know, doesn't make any sense to me.
What do you mean? How do you figure? How do you fit?
No, genetics, that genetics, she should still pick up a gun, even if she's a woman. Why not?
Oh, you had a thing you said that was very anti-feminist before. I forgot what it was. I wish I could have thrown them back. No. Listen.
No,
women.
I'm very egalitarian. I think that women should have all the rights and all the duties.
I think this is a silly. I think I made a very strong argument, and I think now you're trying to, make this about women. I think you're trying to make this about women. It's not about women. It's about the collective. It doesn't matter if they're men or women. I believe men are required to do it. Not every man, but there are certain men that have to step up to the plate, and I'm very grateful for the very brave women that do it as well. But they shouldn't be required to. They choose to. Fine.
I like Charlie Kirk. And I should also pay for the date, and I should also
listen, I'm glad they do it. Listen, but that's not the point. You're moving, Amir. You're moving the goalpost. You're moving the goalpost.
Welcome to the 19th century. But I want to answer.
You're moving the goalpost. You're moving the goalpost. The reality is people in general in every society, there need to be brave people that are willing to put their lives on the line for the betterment of society, for the betterment of the collective. If everybody was an individualist like you, The human race wouldn't exist. You need people. Tribalism is what keeps human beings alive. It has its negatives. Tribalism isn't perfect. Human beings aren't perfect. That's the problem. You look at animals. Animals are tribal like humans are. Does that mean animals aren't violent towards each other? They don't hurt each other and kill each other? Of course not. Living beings that are not plants are going to be tribal by nature. And they are also going to do what they need to do to protect their clan, their group. So if it means they have to be violent towards others to do that, they're going to do that. Animals do it. Humans do it. This is human nature. It's as old as time. To try to change that, it'll never.
I want to refer to that. First, luckily, like there are some people who are smarter and some people who are richer, and inequality is the most natural thing in nature. And therefore, we will have enough people who want to be professional soldiers, full stop. And now, this is besides politics. You can have a professional military. Many countries have professional military, including the US. This is point number one. And point number two is that maybe if people were more reluctant to volunteer to unnecessary wars, at least unnecessary in my view, you will have less unnecessary wars.
That's adorable. That's very cute, Amir. I'm glad you think that way.
Thank you very much.
You have a lot of cute ideas because you have a good life, whether you like to admit it or not. All in all, compared to the vast majority of human beings, it seems like you have things that are pretty good. So
I'm better than the man on the street in Dhaka, Bangladesh.
Listen, I did not grow up rich. Just a background on me. I was raised by a single grandmother. My mother was homeless. I never met her. The only time I met her was when she was in a coffin. Never met my dad. My grandmother was very poor. We grew up in a basement. I'm an only child like you. I didn't have it easy. I'm not one of these rich American Jewish kids that grew up with a trust fund and my dad's a lawyer and I'll sue you if you. I grew up very poor. And I'm not rich right now. But like, if I look at the blessings I do have, I live in America. I had all the benefits. I'm part of a Jewish community.
Who is Israeli in the family? Because I realized that the parents are not Israeli.
Pretty much my whole family. I have a very small number of relatives that live in New York, and then everybody else is in Israel. I have over 200 relatives in Israel.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. But you were not born in Israel.
No. In New York.
And you came to Israel just for the military service, and then after the military service went back to the US.
And by the way, I just want to say I do want to live in Israel. It's a challenge I have. It's a mental thing that I have.
Why didn't you stay? If I may ask the question, you came here. You did the duty. Why don't you enjoy the perks?
That's a very good question. I'm hoping that eventually I will do it. I don't have the right answer.
You are evading.
What?
You are evading the question.
No, there's no real evasion. America, to make money, it is easier in the United States. And I am somebody that wants to be successful because I didn't grow up with it. But if and when, God willing, I do make a good living for myself and I have the ability I have passive income and I have money coming in and I can live well, then great. I don't want to move. I don't want to live in Israel if it's going to be, very difficult. Now, I can acknowledge that. And that's my shortcoming. I can acknowledge that. It's a luxury that I have.
I can tell you that my shortcoming, I'm very honest with you, my shortcoming is that although I have enough income to immigrate easily, and I have also the necessary documents to immigrate not to all the world. I cannot probably live in Fiji, but to a couple of very good countries without a difficulty. I am lazy, Newton's law, the fact that I am already maybe getting a bit older, although I try to look young, but what can be done? I'm 57. It cannot hide.
By the way, I have to say, for all the negativity, you look a lot younger than you are. I don't know what your secret is.
I know. Yeah, I know. I'll tell you why. Because I don't have kids. I don't pay alimonies. I don't have to suffer the nagging of a bitter wife. It helps. Sorry to say that, but it helps.
No,
And
but that's a whole nother psychology. That's a whole nother psychology.
So no, the eventual outcome is that every time I try to immigrate, it works for a very short period. And I also was not lucky to immigrate to good places. I was working overseas. I was working in China. I was working in Turkey. I was not working in good places. That's a fact.
All right. I think this is actually this was a very good discussion. I enjoyed it. I think it was
Me too.
Yeah, I think it was good. I think in a weird way, you have more of a connection to the country than you'd like yourself to believe. And I'm not gonna push that belief on you, but I think day to day there's more that's good than you were willing to admit. Like if not for the financial component for myself, if America did not have more opportunity for me, being that I grew up American speaking, I have all of my family in Israel. There's beautiful girls in Israel. Anytime I've spent there, say again.
You have weird taste in girls, I must say.
Well, Amir, that's also because you're a liberal guy, so you probably I mean, we're very different in our, Yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of them are beautiful.
I have my own eyes and I use glasses, but I see what I see. I cannot deny what I see.
You really don't think there are beautiful women in Israel? That's very interesting.
I can tell you something not about me, okay? About friends of mine. I can tell you that my friends, when they want to meet beautiful women, they go to Russia. Why do they go to Russia if there are such beautiful women in Israel? Ask them. Probably they know something. As for me, the only times I went to Russia was on connection to China. In general, I try to not visit totalitarian countries unless I have to, only for work. In China, I worked, I went there, I made money. I try not to be a tourist. I have allergy to dictatorships, whether they are right wing or left wing.
I hear you. I hear you. I think. Listen, yeah. I mean, I think we covered a lot of ground. What else is there that you? What else is you're probably exhausted. This was not Amir. I enjoyed this. I think both of us got some perspective.
I'm just wondering how much time did we speak, and the answer is over 2 hours. Oh, it's really a good conversation. No, I'm just out of curiosity.
Let me ask you.
What real estate do you do? What real estate do you do? Just now, out of curiosity.
Residential real estate, condos, houses, buying and selling. I'm a broker.
Like a flipper, if I get it correctly.
Not a flipper. No, I help buyers and sellers buy and sell.
I can tell you, totally different discussion. I have some small real estate business in Greece, and I can tell you that my personal experience, very personal experience, is that eventually unless you are really rooted and have very good connections and very well very close ties and capability to locate very specific properties, otherwise go to the stocks, go to finances, go to the stock exchange. I do better there, much better there. My personal experience.
Maybe. I mean, I think I just follow my intuition. I'm a people person. I enjoy negotiation. I like solving problems.
You're a people person. I'm a number cruncher. That's the difference. I hate all of those meetings with realtors, with constructors and plumbers. You can't imagine how allergic I am to that.
You know what? You know why I think that is? And I had to teach this to myself. I can make small talk, and I'm very good at making friends. But my inclination is to have deep conversation. That's why I do this podcast. I like to get to know people. I like to have deep discussion.
Yeah. You're tired of talking to constructors and to roofers and to plumbers and electricians. I get it. I would also be tired of that.
Yeah, I like to learn. I really like to learn things. Even when I talk, and I'm trying to share my thoughts at the same time, I like to learn something. That's my take. Okay, well, Amir, it was a pleasure.
It was a very interesting discussion. By the way, you can, if you want, we can collab or whatever. I also have a YouTube channel.
Yes, we'll do that.
not totally unsuccessful. I mean, I have the like 5,000 followers. Not so
I think you have like 4.33, if I remember correctly, something like that.
I think it's already closer to 5, but maybe you are correct.
One thing I wanted to say, was there anything that I mentioned throughout the episode that maybe was like an aha moment for you that made you say, you know what, that's an interesting point? Were there any things that I said that got you to say, that's interesting, I didn't think of it that way, or you make a good point?
I know you want to hear me say that, but no, these arguments are arguments that I heard quite a lot, and my answers, honestly, were also answers that I made pretty often in the past, usually more in Hebrew than in English, but it's a discussion.
So you're saying it was none of it, it was all the same, you're saying it's all the same stuff, you've heard all of it before?
Yeah, the conflict is religious. There is no way to resolve it. They have to accept that they are second league residents of Israel, and to accept our predominance and our ruling. There is no other way. We have to fight forever. Compromise is impossible because they have the conviction that they should rule everything. I heard it before.
What about your dog? What about the perspective of your dog? What about the perspective that there has to be a level of collectivism, about the need for a military, you know, all these things having
I heard it before. I mean, it's obvious that everybody were freeloaders, then nobody would do the job, and it's also obvious that you can have a military of professional soldiers, like professional civil servants, and you can also. It's also obvious that maybe in some cases, not volunteering to unnecessary wars is the right thing to do. And I think that the best example would be Vietnam. Vietnam War ended not because, Nixon and McNamara at the time were certain that they are soon getting rid of all the Vietnamese because they don't have an endless reservoir of soldiers. They just didn't realize that Americans at some point would no longer be willing to recruit themselves to this war. So I believe that at some point it will happen also in Israel. And by the way, it did happen partly in Israel in the first Lebanon war, because the first Lebanon war, what happened, I remember it as a child, but what happened is that the war was very unpopular after a couple of weeks. At first it was popular, and then it became gradually very unpopular after a couple of weeks, and it became more and more unpopular. And Israel gradually withdrew from Lebanon, not because the government concluded that the stay and the presence in Lebanon is not smart security-wise, but because it became more and more difficult to convince reserve soldiers to go to serve there. I mean, yes, you could legally force them to go there, but you don't want soldiers who come there forced. You don't want them. You want soldiers who come there willfully. You don't. It's by the way also the reason why Israel does not, as a rule of thumb, does not recruit Arabs to the military. You can't force them to serve. You cannot force them to do the service willfully, and you don't want soldiers who are not willfully serving.
No, first of all, there are Arabs who serve. There definitely are some, but listen. Yeah, listen, in an ideal world, if all of the soldiers were fighting on their own accord, fine. But Israel is in a very specific situation. Israel, the history of this land, the history of the Jews, these are very unique things. Like the history of Jewish people. I mean, Mark Twain talks about it. You're a historian. You know your stuff. You know, whatever you want to say about Jewish people, we have a very unique story in many regards. You know,
I'm a communication researcher, not historian, but the point is that at some point...
I'm a historian, but you know history.
Yeah, but at some point, a person wants to think about the present and about his own life, about his own bare necessities and not so bare necessities, simply luxury. And there is a point where a person would say to himself, okay, I mean, maybe I can secure maximum confidence to my people if I go to the military for 30 years every year for 3 months. But what kind of life will I have? And at some point, even the most zealous and most devout patriots say, okay, up to here, I want to live.
Some stay forever.
It's very human. I mean, because otherwise, when will you live? When you are retired, when you are in the grave, when will you have life?
Some people are soldiers at heart. That's their life. Some people do, people in, for example, somebody in Yamam, or or whatever it is. You have Israelis that are that's their life. They devote their lives to it. That's what they connect to. I think you have that across the world. In every country, you have American soldiers that are career soldiers. That's what they live for. You got your, you have all kinds of people. I mean, that's what can I say?
Look, at some point, you will run out of people. I don't know. I cannot predict to you when it will happen. I cannot predict to you. In Lebanon, it gradually started first after a couple of weeks, and then after, I think, around a year to 2 years, it was really becoming a problem to the extent that the government decided to start withdrawing. I mean, it started to withdraw in 84. The war started in 82, which means that after 2 years, the government concluded, and the security situation didn't change. They simply came to the conclusion that they can no longer sustain the situation wherein every year soldiers go to 2
Well, I'll tell you something, Amir. I'll tell you something. In order to increase the morale of, say, Israeli soldiers, if the war was a lot more swift, then people wouldn't necessarily feel this burnout. What that means, unfortunately, is if it is more swift, there's a much higher probability of more deaths, at least in the short term. I think swift wars are much better than prolonged wars, because even if a prolonged war has the illusion that there are fewer deaths, I think almost always, if you have this prolonged war, you end up with more deaths in the long run. Not always.
I understand you, and what you say actually makes sense, but the era of blitzkriegs is over. It's not just over for Israel. Putin was also thinking that it's going to be a blitzkrieg in Ukraine. 2 weeks he's finishing with you. It didn't work.
Well, listen,
wars are now taking years. That's the age. That's the time.
Well, they're taking years. They're taking years because I think we're trying to delude ourselves that we're more moral than we like. I think human beings in the age of social media and technology and AI are trying to delude ourselves that we're so much better than we used to be. And I think sadly, war is inevitable. War will always exist to some extent. Not just because of the, what's the word I'm looking for? The existential threat to countries. It'll exist because people want power. They want money. These military industrial complexes are always going to, if there's no war, these countries like Lockheed, these military industrial companies like Lockheed Martin, how are they going to make their money? They have to distribute weapons, build weapons, send them out.
Which is called, which says that Israel is the laboratory of American warfare devices. But maybe I would now be more pessimistic for a second. Maybe the reason that the anti-war movement in Israel was stronger in previous wars, was stronger in Lebanon, first Lebanon war for sure. I remember as a child, the fraction of society that was against the war was much larger than right now. The reason might also have to do with demographics. The religious right-wing fraction of society is by far larger now. First, because of higher fertility, partly immigration, and partly the fact that like any sane people, left-wingers, seculars who have extra passport, good occupation, are not working as policemen or as teachers, but they are working in computers or working as doctors, they simply immigrate. I mean, when I have an apartment in Athens, and when I go to Athens, I see many Israelis who live there. Most of them are not religious people who came in order to build a synagogue or I don't know, a factory of kosher food in Athens. No, They immigrate because they have passive income. They can work from abroad. They are tired of wars, and they can allow it to themselves. And maybe if my apartment was not in Athens but was in Monaco, I would see even richer Israelis who do the same. And you don't see there religious people often, you don't see there traditional conservative people, you don't see there people who are very right-wing. Those who live are those who are, I mean, I'm not saying that they are not often more patriotic than I am, more nationalistic than I am, more supporting of war crimes than I am. They are very often, but still they are closely or more closely affiliated with the left than with the right. It's obvious. If you are left, you immigrate. If you are right, you stay.
Yeah, well, not always, because I know quite a bunch of Israelis in South Florida, and without a doubt, every single one of them I've met is very, very pro-Israel, like very Zionist and all that. Yeah, I mean, I think there's all kinds of reasons. I think also the reality is a lot of the secular left in Israel is trying to, wants the country to be as secular and left-wing as possible, but the reality is the Muslim world, when they see a Jewish country that isn't religious, and just hear me out for a second, when they see a prime minister that isn't religious, when they see many people that aren't religious, when they see the gay parade and all that, they say to themselves, well, they claimed it's their chosen people and it's their holy land and it was promised to them, but they're not acting like it. So we're going to take it from them. We're going to fight them for it, because we, when we conquer it, we will make it the religious holy land it's supposed to be. And so I think, it's very different than the way you see it, but I think and you're going to lose your mind when I say this, but at Tzvi Yechezkeli, I think the Arabs would have a large amount of respect for him. I think they would see him as a genuine Jew. They would see him as somebody who's devout, who speaks Arabic, who grew up. He went back to Judaism. I think he would be somebody that the Arab world would actually give a lot of credence to, would very much respect. And I also don't think that he would be oppressive to liberals either. Like I think people would have their rights and they'd be free, but I think he would have the ability to build bridges with the Arab and Muslim world differently than a lot of our prime ministers were able to in the past. So I'm just bringing his name up. I think he would be a very good leader. That's my feeling.
I think he would be an awful leader, but
yeah. I know you do, but I think
I know his journalistic work, and I can tell you that, for instance, the very much talked about series that he made about Islam in Europe is so twisted and so exaggerated. For example, in the episode that he was filming in France and trying to show how Islamized France is, he went to Saint Louis, which is a small quarter of a very insignificant town in the border of France. And he went there to a certain neighborhood where the majority is religious Muslim, and he picked that specific. It's more or less like I would go to Crown Heights and will tell you, the United States is Hasidic and predominant by Lubavitchers.
Yeah, but
Amir, how do I know that? I know that because that town is very close to the airport of Basel, and I had a girlfriend who lived not far from that airport, and therefore I visited that town plenty of times, and I saw the neighborhood where he visited, and I saw everything. And I'm telling you, he was twisting the reality.
Okay, so you don't think that Europe is becoming weaker and that the immigrants are presenting a problem?
Oof. Again, you see, you have to ask whether you are talking in color or you're talking in black and white. Are there more Muslims in Europe? Are there more Muslims in Europe now than there were 20 years ago? Yes, there are. Do you have more religious Muslims now in Europe than 20 years ago? Again, the answer is yes. Is it a burning question and a burning problem that is about to destroy Europe, as Israeli media likes to portray? The answer is no. Because I'm not saying that immigration is good. I mean, in the previous part of this broadcast, I said that I would not give free carte blanche immigration to Europe, to anyone who wants to come there.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely, I do see a problem here. But the problem is very, very far from the extent that it is portrayed in Israeli media.
Well, it might not happen tomorrow, but I think it's a boiling pot. I think the majority, again, it's not about Muslims, it's about Islam. And it's not because Islam is so much worse. It's that the reality is they haven't gone through the Renaissance. And so you have, I believe, the majority of the Muslim population in Europe don't want problems, but they're not doing anything to go against the ones that do. And there is a percentage. You see it in England, you see it in France, you see it in Sweden. There are groups that very much want to convert those countries. They want to take over those countries. It's not this conspiratorial thing where I'm like, ooh, ooga booga.
Reason why you have to fight them is because they are Jews and Christians. You should fight those empires around you, or those hukumat around you, which are Jew or Christian, until they give the jizya. That's fine. That we already know Islam allows. And then the howness of that is in the hadith. The three options that they're given: either you give the jizya, or you do this, or you do that. We're not apologetic about that point. That is truth. Your religion has to have an expansionist element. So then, therefore, there is no situation or conceivability of peace being made between Muslims and non-Muslims. Islam is a warrior religion in many ways, and it's unapologetically so. It's about expansion, it's about conquest and so on.
Now, legally, when Muslims live in places like Britain, for example, which legally we would classify Britain as Darul Harb, right? Which is, if you translate it, it's abode of war.
The kuffar from Dar al-Harb, there can never be a permanent treaty with the kuffar because it cancels out jihad. It can't be forever. When Muslims get stronger and it's a benefit for the Muslims, they inform the enemy, this treaty has come to an end.
Spiritual, but the chances that a small fraction of look,
the birth rate is significantly higher. The birth rate is much higher.
Yes, but most of the immigrants to Europe from third world are actually not even Muslims, because the number of Hindus and Chinese and all of this East Asia is larger. Then most of the Muslims are not Arabs, because most of them are Turks and Pakistani. And within the fractions that are Arabs, most of them are not Palestinians, but coming from much more moderate countries such as Algeria and Morocco. And within those Palestinians and Palestinians-related immigrants who are more extreme and more religious and more extreme, the number of those who are religious is also just a small fraction. And having said all of that, do we have more of them now than we had 20 years ago? Yes. What are the chances that a couple of religious freaks who live in Norway will convince all the Norwegians to convert to Islam? The chances are more or less like the chances of me convincing you now that what you should do is, starting to support the Palestinian struggle because they are so discriminated.
Well, it's not about convincing.
One out of 100,000.
Well, convincing is not so much a worry; it's forcing, which is a different story. Meaning, if you, and first of all, I want to flip it. I don't believe any group should try to force their way. Christian countries should leave the Middle Eastern countries alone. They want to be dictatorial. They want to be authoritarian. Let them be. But what do people do? People like to meddle in other people's affairs. America likes to meddle in other people's affairs because they're this empire and they want oil and gas and all this other nonsense. And they say, oh, well, let's democratize the Middle East. It doesn't work. They oust a leader. a new dictator comes in and replaces him. And so I in an ideal world, people would mind their own business and stay out of other people's affairs. But we don't live in that world. What can I tell you?
No, I'm more idealistic than you are. Look, I don't say that we should now run into a crusade in order to throw Putin. Okay, no. But would I be in commercial relations willfully with Russia? No, I don't even go to Russia for. I mean, I have friends who go to Russia for tourism. I never go to Russia, and I'm not going to visit Turkey either, and I'm not going to visit UAE, and I'm not going to visit any country unless it is work purpose. That is a dictatorship. Yes, I have the right not to spend my money on dictators. I don't want to spend, and if I have to choose, if I can choose between a product made in China, okay, and a product made in Japan for the same price, usually not the same price, that's a problem. But if it's going to be more or less same price, always Japan wins. I don't like dictatorships. I have allergy to dictatorships.
What's so interesting is where the majority of Jews are, the countries are not dictatorships, and I think it has a lot to do with the fact that they are there. You know, like much of the Middle East is dictatorial. Much of Latin America and throughout time was dictatorial. Africa, much of Africa was dictatorial and still is. So much of the world runs on either dictatorship or communism. And yet you spend so much time hating on Israel when Israel has so much more freedom than so much of the rest of the world. That's what I find interesting.
Israel is by far more pretentious than Niger or Mali. Niger and Mali do not pretend to be democracies. They are not members of the OECD. They don't pretend to be progressive or to be liberal. They don't pretend to be part of the Western world, and they don't pretend to be in any kind of civilization other than Arab primitive. Also partly Arabic, but
that's what happens when you're Jewish. That's part of being Jew. Part of being Jewish is even when you don't want to, even when you want to kind of not exist and kind of live under a rock, the world doesn't let you. You know, people like yourself, you don't want to be associated with any. You want to just kind of disappear into nothingness. Like, just leave me alone with my dog. I don't want anyone to know. But then again, you also kind of like that you have some level of fame. You mentioned that, you know, it's helped you get women. So it's like. It's kind of paradoxical, but whether we like it or not, Jews exist and people know about us. We can't really, we're not people that.
Again, I can only lament on the fact that great grandfather did not accept the reasonable, I don't want to say generous, but the reasonable offer of Turkmeda and said, okay, you are right. So far, what happened. We had our couple of hundreds of years of Judaism. Now it's about to be over. Salute.
That's a crazy it's just a defeatist mentality. I don't have to dissolve my existence and identity because people don't like it. I mean, I hear you. I mean, that's crazy, but sure. I mean,
because you're banging your head in the wall. You end up in Auschwitz. You end up in Gaza. You end up in awful places. Why do you want to end up there? I mean, you're driving into no entry. You're driving into cul-de-sac. Why?
Nah, that doesn't. But we've tried your way. Jews have tried the assimilation route. It hasn't done any better for us. The reality is
it can work now. Now it can work. Now the world is already ripe for that. The Western world.
No.
It's a never-ending argument because you're not willing to check it. You're not willing to assimilate, so we'll remain with the disagreement.
Okay, we'll agree to disagree. Fair enough. All right, Amir, I'm going to end this.
I'll let you. Interesting conversation.
It was. I'm glad. It was really. I enjoyed it. So, Amir, thank you for joining me, ladies and gents.
Let me just take a. I want to because of this. It's just a second. I want to take a picture of the screen for a story, but how on earth do I do it? Here it is. No, doesn't work. Works now. Okay. Anyway, so see you, I guess. I don't know where, but see you.
Yeah, let me just finish it off. Let me just kind of wrap it up. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for making it to the end of this episode. This has been another episode of Soothing Semantics. I'm your host, Raffi Pinsky. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Hit the like button. Leave your comments. Helen, just give it 1 second, Amir. I just wanted to.
I just put it back. Just a second. I'm putting it back.
No worries. And of course, make sure to follow me, Raffi the Realtor.
Just a second. Sorry, this was not.
It's all good.
This was totally not intentional. You can interpret it as you wish, but it was totally not intentional.
I don't think it was. Yes. So
Yeah,
thank you guys for watching. No worries. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, leave your comments, and I look forward to you watching the next episode. Peace. All right. So that's a wrap.